My husband expects to be rubbed every single night. I've been married to my husband Ryan for 8 years. We've been together for nearly 11. He's a good man, responsible, kind to our daughter, and hard-working. But there's this one thing that's been driving me quietly insane. Every single night, without fail, he expects me to rub his back or shoulders before bed. It started as something small, early in our relationship. He'd come home exhausted from his construction job. His muscles sore and I'd offer to rub his back. It was something affectionate, intimate. Even, I liked that I could help him relax. But as years passed, that small act of kindness turned into a nightly obligation. Now it's not even a request. It's an expectation. We'll be watching TV, winding down after putting our daughter, Ellie, to bed. I'll be scrolling on my phone or folding laundry, and without even looking at me, he'll lie down and say, "You know what time it is." If I hesitate, he sighs. Sometimes he'll half-jokingly say, "Don't make me beg," or "You're slacking tonight." But it's not really a joke. If I say I'm too tired, he'll act hurt, like I've personally rejected him. "You know I can't sleep without it," he'll say. At first, I thought maybe I was being dramatic. It's just a few minutes, right? But when you do something every single night, it stops feeling like affection and starts feeling like a chore. The worst part is he doesn't reciprocate. I've had long days too. Working full-time at a dental office, coming home to cook, clean, help Ellie with homework, get her ready for bed. I'm physically and mentally done by the time I crawl into bed. But Ryan never once offers to rub my back. If I ever asked, he'd do it for a minute, tops, and then complain that his hands hurt. I finally brought it up 2 weeks ago. We were getting ready for bed, and he flopped onto his stomach like always. I said, "Ryan, I don't want to do this every night anymore." He turned his head, eyebrows raised. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm tired too. I feel like I have to do this." "Not that I want to," he frowned. "It's not like I'm asking for much. It helps me relax. You know I've got that knot in my shoulder." "I know," I said. "But it's every single night. It's become this obligation. I don't want that between us." He rolled over, clearly annoyed. "So you don't want to help me feel better after I bust my ass all day? That's nice." The conversation spiraled. I told him it wasn't about refusing affection. It was about balance. I told him I'd happily do it sometimes, but not every night. He said that was cold. For the next few nights, he didn't say anything, but his silence was loud. He'd lie in bed facing away from me, huffing like a child. Then one night, he made a dramatic show of rubbing his own shoulders. Muttering under his breath, I ignored it. But last weekend, at a family barbecue, it somehow came up. His sister Jenna asked jokingly if he still got his nightly massage. I gave a small laugh and said, "Not as often these days." Ryan smirked and said, "Yeah. Apparently she's too tired for her husband now." Everyone laughed, but I could feel my face go hot. Later, I pulled him aside and told him it was unfair to air our private stuff like that. He said, "It was a joke, stop being sensitive." But the truth is, it hurt because he genuinely thinks I'm being unreasonable. Since then, I've been thinking about it more deeply. This isn't just about massages. It's about the way he takes my care for granted. When we first got together, he was so attentive. He'd cook dinner sometimes, bring me coffee in bed on weekends, ask about my day, but somewhere along the line, he got comfortable. Maybe we both did. He's a great dad, and I know he loves me. But love isn't just words or habits, it's effort. Last night was another test. He lay down again, wordlessly, like he expected it. I didn't move. After a minute, he turned his head and said, "Well, I'm not doing it tonight." He sighed dramatically and rolled over. "Unbelievable," I said quietly. "Ryan, if you want a back rub, I'll do it sometimes. But I'm not your personal masseuse." He didn't respond. We went to sleep without touching. Today, he texted me during lunch saying, "You've been distant lately." I stared at the message for a long time. I typed back, "I've been tired." Then I deleted it. Instead, I wrote, "Maybe we both need to talk about how to make things feel fair again." He didn't respond. I don't know if this sounds petty to outsiders. Maybe it does. But when you spend years giving and giving in small ways that no one acknowledges, it adds up. The resentment starts to build like rust. I don't want our marriage to rot over something as small as a back rub, but it's not small anymore. It's become a symbol of everything I give that goes unnoticed. Maybe tonight I'll tell him exactly that, not as a fight, but as a truth. I don't want to be the only one putting in the quiet work to keep us connected, because love shouldn't feel like labor. Update. It's been about 3 weeks since I posted, and I've gone through every emotion possible. Anger, guilt, confusion, and a weird sort of grief for what I thought my marriage was versus what it's become. After my original post, things were tense. Ryan and I were in this strange Cold War, barely speaking beyond basic parenting logistics. He'd still flop into bed every night, but he stopped saying anything when I didn't touch him. He'd just roll over and scroll his phone. I could feel the distance between us growing. And honestly, it scared me. About 5 days after my post, I decided I couldn't live in that silence anymore. I asked if we could talk after Ellie went to bed. He said, "About what?" "About us," he sighed, like even that was an inconvenience. But he agreed. We sat on the couch. I remember my heart racing because I didn't want it to turn into another argument. I wanted him to hear me. I said, "I feel like I'm being taken for granted. Not just with the massages, but everything. I work. I handle most of the home stuff. And I still try to be affectionate. But it feels one-sided." He didn't interrupt, which was a small miracle. I told him that I didn't mind helping him relax sometimes, but that it wasn't fair to expect me to do it every single night like it was some sort of duty. Then I said something that even surprised me. "When you lay down and just wait for me to do it, I feel like an employee instead of your wife." That got his attention. He frowned and said, "That's not what I meant. I just thought it was our thing. You used to do it without me asking." "I did," I said, "because I wanted to. But now I feel like I have to. And that changes everything." He rubbed his face, looking frustrated but not angry. For the first time, I saw a bit of realization on his face. He said, "I didn't realize you felt that way. I just thought you were being distant lately for no reason." That's when I broke down a bit. I told him how exhausted I've been, how I miss feeling like we're partners instead of caretaker and dependent. We talked for nearly 2 hours that night. There were tears, mostly mine, but it was one of the few truly honest conversations we've had in a long time. He apologized sincerely. He said he hadn't realized that what was a small comfort for him had become a burden for me. He admitted he's gotten complacent. He said something that stuck with me. "I guess I just assumed you'd always take care of me because you always have." And as much as I appreciated the honesty, it also stung. The next few days were weirdly quiet again, but in a different way, not angry, just thoughtful. He started helping more around the house. Without me asking, he did the dishes a couple of nights. He helped Ellie with her reading. Then one night, he came into our room holding lotion and said, "Your turn." I laughed, but I almost cried too. He rubbed my shoulders for maybe 15 minutes, carefully, gently. And when I told him he didn't have to, he said, "Yeah, I kind of do." It wasn't perfect after that. Old habits die hard some nights. I could see him fighting the urge to roll over and expect the usual. But we started talking more, really talking. He told me he feels like I've been emotionally distant for longer than just the past few weeks. That hurt. But he wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the line, resentment had built up. And I stopped reaching for him first. We started going for walks after dinner, leaving our phones behind. Sometimes we don't even talk. We just walk. But it's something. Last weekend, we had another family gathering. Same backyard, same people. Jenna, of course, couldn't resist teasing. She asked if Ryan was getting his nightly rubs again. I was ready to roll my eyes. But Ryan surprised me. He said, "Nah, I do hers now." Fair's fair, everyone laughed. But this time it felt lighthearted. He wasn't mocking me. He was showing me, in his way, that he'd listened. After we got home that night, I told him how much that meant to me. He said, "You were right. I was taking you for granted. I don't want to be that guy. I don't know what the future holds. Marriage isn't something you fix overnight. It's made up of a million small moments, and for a while, ours were all tilting in one direction. Now, it feels like we're trying to balance them again. I still don't rub his back every night. Some nights I do, because I want to. Some nights he does mine. Some nights we just fall asleep tangled up. No expectations, no sighs, no tension. I didn't realize how freeing that would feel until now. For anyone who said in the comments of my original post that I wasn't crazy or petty, thank you. You helped me realize it wasn't about the act itself. It was about respect, about partnership, and about not letting the little things erode something big. Ryan and I aren't perfect, but we're both trying. And honestly, that feels like enough for now. Final update. It's been just over 6 months since I first wrote about Ryan expecting nightly back rubs. And I honestly can't believe how much has changed since then, both in my marriage and in how I see myself. After my last update, things between us felt lighter, but we both knew that the issues ran deeper than a nightly routine. What started as frustration over something small had uncovered a pattern in how we both had been operating. I was constantly giving, and Ryan had gotten used to taking without thinking. We decided to try couples counseling. It was actually Ryan's idea, which surprised me. He came home one evening, sat next to me on the couch, and said, "I don't want us to fall back into old habits. Maybe we need help figuring out how not to," I agreed. Though I'll admit I was nervous. I've never been to therapy before, and part of me was scared it would turn into a blame session. But it didn't. Our counselor, a woman named Marlene, was incredible. The first session, she asked us to each describe our biggest frustration without interrupting or defending ourselves. When it was my turn, I said, "I feel invisible, like my comfort doesn't matter as much as his." Ryan didn't argue. He just nodded, and I could tell that for once. He was really hearing me. When it was his turn, he said something that broke my heart a little. "I feel like she doesn't need me anymore." That surprised me. I thought he just liked being taken care of. But as we unpacked things, it became clear that some of his need for attention came from insecurity. Like if I wasn't doting on him, I must not care. We've both carried different kinds of exhaustion into our marriage. Mine was physical and emotional, constantly managing, constantly giving. His was mental, feeling like he was only useful when he was being cared for, not when he was contributing. In therapy, we started learning how to show care in ways that worked for both of us. Instead of him waiting for me to rub his shoulders every night, we built new rituals. Some nights we play cards after Ellie's in bed. Other nights we give each other 10-minute massages. No expectations, just connection. And some nights we just lie in silence and talk about our days. The change didn't happen overnight, but the effort has been consistent. There was one night a couple months ago that really hit me. I came home late from work, exhausted after covering for a sick coworker. The house was clean, dinner was on the table. Ellie was already in her pajamas. Ryan handed me a plate and said, "Sit down, eat first, shower after. I've got everything." After dinner, he rubbed my shoulders without me saying a word. It wasn't about fairness anymore. It was about love being something active again. That night I cried, not because I was sad, but because I realized how far we'd come from that version of us who couldn't even share a bed without resentment. Therapy also made me face my own patterns. I realized I'd been holding on to control in a lot of ways. I was so used to being the responsible one that I rarely asked for help. When I did, I expected him to already know what I needed. That wasn't fair either, so now I ask, and he listens. It's such a small shift, but it's made everything feel more equal. We've also been spending more time as a family. Weekends used to be our catch-up time. Chores, errands, repeat. Now once a month, we take a day trip somewhere new. Last month, we drove to a little beach town 2 hours away. Ellie built sandcastles while we sat with our feet in the water. And at one point Ryan leaned over and said quietly, "Thanks for not giving up on me." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. Do we still argue? Of course, marriage doesn't suddenly become perfect because you figure out one problem. But now when we fight, it's different. We don't go days without talking. We take space, then come back. We both learned that winning isn't the goal. Understanding is. There's one more thing I want to share. Something that feels like full circle. A few weeks ago, after putting Ellie to bed, Ryan was lying on the couch. He looked at me and smiled, then said, "You know what time it is?" I gave him a look, ready to roll my eyes, but he grinned and said, "Movie night, not massages." He laughed so hard at his own joke that I couldn't help but laugh too. But that moment, that silly small exchange, meant everything. It reminded me that humor was one of the first things that brought us together. Somewhere along the way, we'd lost that lightness. Now it's coming back. When I first wrote my story, I thought it was about a back rub. It wasn't. It was about feeling seen, valued, and treated as an equal. It was about not letting small acts of love become chores, and about refusing to carry the weight of a relationship alone. Now, I can honestly say I feel loved again. And not because Ryan changed completely, but because we both did. We're learning to meet in the middle, to keep choosing each other even on the hard days, and to recognize that intimacy doesn't have to be physical. Sometimes it's just sitting together, both of us finally at peace. I don't know what the future will bring, but right now, our home feels warm again. And every time I see him make the bed or tuck Ellie in, or ask me how my day really was, I remember that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about the quiet, consistent ones that remind you we're in this together. Stories number 2. My body screamed, but no one listened. 2 weeks ago, I almost lost my ovary because 3 different doctors told me I was just anxious. I've gone over it 1,000 times in my head. And every time I replay it, I get angrier. I'm 28, healthy, active, and I know my body. But apparently that wasn't enough to be believed. It started on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work. I'm a paralegal at a small law firm in Cleveland, when I felt this sharp, stabbing pain on my right side. It wasn't the usual cramping I get before my period. It felt like someone had hooked a fish line inside my gut and was pulling hard. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was gas or something I ate. But within an hour, I was doubled over in the office bathroom. Sweating and shaking, my boss, Thomas, found me there and insisted I go home. I tried to drive myself, but halfway through the trip, I had to pull over in a CVS parking lot because the pain was so bad I thought I was going to black out. I called my boyfriend, Daniel, and he drove me to the ER at the hospital. I told the intake nurse that I had severe abdominal pain, nausea, and dizziness. She handed me a clipboard and told me to sit down. I remember trying to breathe through the waves of pain, my hands shaking so badly I could barely write my name. After about 40 minutes, they finally called me in. The first doctor, Dr. Lewis, didn't even look up from his tablet when I started describing the pain. "You said you're due for your period?" he asked. I nodded. "Sounds like premenstrual cramps. Do you have a history of anxiety?" That question made me want to scream. I told him I'd been treated for mild anxiety a few years ago, after my dad passed away, but that I wasn't currently having panic symptoms. "This isn't anxiety," I told him. "It feels like something's tearing inside me." He smiled, that patronizing, practiced smile, and said, "Sometimes anxiety can amplify physical sensations. Let's get you a warm blanket and some fluids. We'll run a quick blood panel just in case." An hour later, he came back and said all my labs were normal. He suggested I take ibuprofen and see my primary care doctor if it got worse. By the time Daniel got me home, I was crying from the pain. I curled up on the floor of our living room because lying flat made it worse. He wanted to take me back, but I was too exhausted and humiliated from being brushed off. I fell asleep for maybe 2 hours before the pain woke me up again, sharper than before. The next morning, Daniel called my gynecologist's office and begged them to squeeze me in. They gave us a same-day appointment with a new doctor in the practice, Dr. Harper. I limped into the office, holding my stomach like something might fall out. She listened for maybe 30 seconds before saying, "It sounds like you're really tense. Have you been under stress lately?" I laughed, like actually laughed through the pain, because I couldn't believe it. I told her I wasn't stressed. I was in agony. She did a quick pelvic exam, said everything felt normal, and suggested yoga and deep breathing. I wanted to throw something at her. By Saturday morning, I couldn't walk upright. The pain had moved to my lower abdomen and right side, and I started vomiting. Daniel called another hospital, a bigger one downtown, and said we were coming in whether they liked it or not. I could barely speak when we got there. The triage nurse, an older woman named Cheryl, took one look at me and immediately got me a bed. "Honey, you don't look anxious," she said. "You look like you're dying." Within 15 minutes, they had an IV in, morphine going, and an ultrasound tech wheeling me off for imaging. The tech, a young guy named Marcus, was quiet for most of it, but his face changed halfway through. He said, "I'm not supposed to say anything, but you've got something serious going on. Don't leave until the doctor talks to you." Dr. Patel, the on-call OBGYN, came in 20 minutes later with a grim expression. "You have ovarian torsion," she said. "Your right ovary twisted around the ligament. It's cutting off its own blood supply." I blinked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means if we don't operate immediately, you could lose the ovary and possibly your fertility on that side." I burst into tears. Not because of the surgery, but because I'd known something was wrong for 2 days and no one had listened. I was in the operating room within the hour. The next thing I remember is waking up in recovery, my throat raw from the breathing tube. Daniel was there holding my hand. He said, "Doctor." Patel told him they'd managed to save the ovary, but it had been minutes away from necrosis. When I asked her later how close it had been, she said, "Another hour, maybe 2, and we would have had to remove it." I've been home recovering since, but I can't stop thinking about the other doctors, about how easily they dismissed me because I'm a young woman with a history of anxiety. If Daniel hadn't insisted on that third opinion, I might have lost part of my reproductive system, or worse. When I tried to file a complaint with the first hospital, the patient advocate said, "We're sorry for your experience, but doctors make the best judgments with the information they have." That sentence made me want to throw up. I started writing this because I don't want to forget the way it felt to be so sure something was wrong, and be told over and over that I was just nervous. I want people to know that you can be calm, articulate, and still be gaslit by people who are supposed to help you. My mom came over yesterday and told me she had the same thing happen 20 years ago. A ruptured cyst that doctors ignored until it almost killed her. It's the same story every time, she said. They don't listen until you're on the edge of dying. I don't want that to be the story anymore. I'm lucky, so lucky, that I still have both ovaries. I'm lucky Daniel didn't take "it's just anxiety" as an answer. But I shouldn't have needed luck. I should have had competent care. Now, I'm filing formal complaints and reaching out to women's health advocates in my area. I don't know if it'll change anything, but I need to try. Because if someone reads my story and decides to get a second or third opinion when something feels wrong, maybe it'll save them from what I went through. Because I'm done being polite about pain. I'm done letting anyone tell me it's in my head. My body was screaming. I just needed someone to actually listen. It's been 3 weeks since I posted about almost losing my ovary, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened since. I didn't expect my story to blow up the way it did. I wrote it partly to vent, partly to warn other women to trust their bodies. But reading the comments, messages, and stories from other people who went through the same thing made me realize this isn't just about me. It's a whole system problem. After my surgery, I spent about a week at home recovering. Daniel basically turned into a one-man nurse. He'd bring me soup, help me up the stairs, even wash my hair when I couldn't bend. Every time I thanked him, he'd say, "You almost died. You don't thank me for doing what anyone decent would do." I didn't realize until after the surgery how close things had been. The doctor later told me that when they untwisted the ovary, it was already dark purple. Blood flow had been almost completely cut off. The physical recovery was rough, but the emotional side hit harder than I expected. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, terrified that something was wrong again. My body still didn't feel like my own. I'd go from being grateful to furious to just empty. A few days after I got home, I decided to request my medical records from the first 2 doctors who dismissed me. It took almost a week of phone calls to even get them to send anything. When I finally got the notes, I sat on the couch with Daniel reading them line by line, my stomach turning. The first ER doctor, Dr. Lewis, had written, "Patient presence with lower abdominal pain, history of anxiety noted, symptoms likely psychosomatic in nature, psychosomatic." He actually wrote that. The gynecologist, Dr. Harper, had written, "Mild tenderness noted, no concerning findings, encouraged mindfulness and stress management." Reading those words made me feel sick. It was right there in black and white. Proof that they didn't just miss it, they dismissed it. I'd told both of them how much pain I was in, and they'd turned it into an emotional problem instead of a physical one. I sent copies of the notes to Dr. Patel, the surgeon who actually treated me, and asked if she'd be willing to write something confirming that the torsion would have been visible or diagnosable earlier. She emailed me back within a day. "Yes, based on your description and timeline, a pelvic ultrasound would have immediately shown the torsion. It should not have been missed." That one email felt like validation for every ounce of self-doubt I'd carried since this started. So, with that in hand, I filed formal complaints against both doctors. The hospital's patient advocate called me a few days later and asked if I'd like to participate in a case review. I said yes. They had me come in on a Tuesday morning and sit in this cold little conference room with 2 administrators and a risk manager. I told them exactly what happened. Every word, every dismissive glance. Every time I was told to breathe through the pain. When I finished, one of the administrators said, "We're deeply sorry for your experience." It sounded rehearsed, like she'd said it 1,000 times before. I asked if either doctor would face consequences. She said, "We can't discuss personnel actions, but we take your concerns seriously." That phrase, "we take your concerns seriously," might be the most meaningless sentence in healthcare. But I wasn't done. I contacted a medical malpractice attorney named Caroline Hayes. She was kind, calm, and she didn't talk down to me. She said cases like mine are difficult but not impossible, especially with written proof of misdiagnosis and delayed treatment. She's helping me gather the documents, and we're looking into whether we can file a negligence claim. I don't know if I'll win anything, but it's not even about money. I want a record. I want it documented somewhere official that they failed me. Dr. Patel actually called me last week to check in. She said she'd read about the post. Apparently one of her nurses showed her, and she wanted to thank me for speaking up. "You wouldn't believe how often this happens," she said. We're trained to look for the most common causes. And in women, unfortunately, that often gets boiled down to anxiety or hormones. It's lazy medicine. That conversation stayed with me. It made me realize that while some doctors are part of the problem, others are trying to change it from within. She even invited me to join a patient advocacy group that meets monthly at the hospital. I'm planning to attend next week. Meanwhile, my mom has turned into a full-blown activist. She printed out my Reddit post, highlighted parts of it, and mailed it to our local women's health organization. She keeps saying, if they won't listen to one woman, they'll listen to 100. The weirdest part of all of this is how much it's changed my relationships. Daniel and I are closer than we've ever been, but I can tell he's still scared. Every time I wince or hold my stomach, he looks like he's about to panic. My boss, Thomas, has been incredibly supportive too. He gave me extra paid leave even though I didn't ask for it. But my dad's sister, my Aunt Joyce, called me a few days ago and said, I think you're overreacting with all this legal stuff. Doctors make mistakes. I almost hung up on her. I told her it wasn't a mistake, it was negligence, and that if I'd been a man with sudden testicular pain, I probably would have had an ultrasound in 10 minutes flat. She didn't have much to say after that. I still get pain sometimes. Mild, dull aches that come and go, doctor. Patel says it's normal while the tissue fully recovers. But every time I feel it, I get a flash of that night in the ER, begging someone to listen. It's like a physical memory of being dismissed. Last weekend, Daniel and I went for a walk around Lake Erie to get some air. It was the first time I felt almost normal again. We sat on a bench, and I told him, I think I want to go back to school. He looked surprised. For what? Nursing, I said. Or maybe medical advocacy? I want to be the person who listens when someone says they're in pain. He just smiled and said, you'd be amazing at that. I don't know if I'll actually go through with it, but the idea of turning something this awful into something that helps other people feels like the only way it'll ever make sense. For now, I'm still healing, physically and mentally. I'm still angry, still exhausted, but also still here, still fighting. If anyone reading this is in pain and feels brushed off, please don't stop pushing. Don't let anyone convince you that you're imagining it. You know your body better than anyone, and if you're a healthcare worker reading this, listen. It costs nothing to listen. It could save someone's life. I almost lost an ovary because no one believed me. Now I'm done being quiet about it. It's been just over 6 months since everything happened, and my life looks completely different now. When I first wrote about almost losing my ovary, I never imagined it would lead to everything that's happened since. Not just with my health, but with my outlook on the world, my career, and even how I see myself after that last post, the hospital's case review, quietly wrapped up. I never got a personal apology from either Dr. Lewis or Dr. Harper, but I did get a letter from the hospital's risk management department that said, we acknowledge that aspects of your care did not meet our standard of patient responsiveness. That one phrase, did not meet our standard, was as close to accountability as they were ever going to get. I pinned it to my fridge as a reminder of what I survived. Around that same time, my attorney Caroline told me the case was moving forward. We didn't file for full malpractice. That's almost impossible to win unless permanent damage occurs. But we did file a negligence claim for failure to diagnose resulting in emergency surgical intervention. I didn't do it for a payout. I did it so there'd be a paper trail. Caroline warned me it could take a year or longer, but she seemed optimistic. The first few months after surgery were slow. I went back to work part-time in January. My boss, Thomas, told me to take it easy. But I found myself hyper-aware of my body all the time. Every ache, every twinge, every weird sensation. I kept a journal of pain levels and symptoms because I was terrified of missing something again. Daniel was patient through all of it. He'd bring home takeout when I was too tired to cook and started coming with me to my follow-up appointments. Not because he didn't trust me, but because he didn't trust the system. One night, while we were watching TV, I caught him looking at me with this quiet worry on his face. I asked him what was wrong, and he said, I just can't believe how close we came to losing you. I hadn't thought of it that way. I'd been focused on the ovary, on the physical part, but he was right. Untreated torsion can lead to sepsis, shock, even death. I think it finally hit both of us at the same time. I started crying, and he pulled me into his arms and said, You're allowed to be angry, but you're also allowed to heal. That sentence stuck with me. In February, I went to my first meeting with the patient advocacy group Dr. Patel invited me to. It was in a small conference room at the hospital. Mostly women sitting in a circle. Nurses, midwives, patients, even one resident doctor. Everyone shared their stories, and I realized just how common mine was. One woman, maybe in her 50s, told us she'd lost her uterus because her doctor ignored her pain for 2 weeks. Another said she was told her endometriosis was stress-related. I walked out of that meeting shaking, angry, but also inspired. I started volunteering with them once a week, helping other women file complaints and document their experiences. We started a small campaign called Listen First, focused on getting hospitals to provide better training around pain bias in women's health. We even got local news coverage. I spoke on camera about my experience, shaking like crazy but determined to say what needed to be said. Dr. Patel was watching that night. She called me afterward and said, "You did good, kid. You made people listen." That meant more than I can explain. Then, in March, something I never expected happened. I got a letter from Dr. Harper, the gynecologist who dismissed me. It was handwritten, not typed. She said she'd seen my interview and that it made her reevaluate her approach to patient care. She didn't outright apologize for what happened, but she wrote, "I realize now that listening is as critical as diagnosing. I failed to hear you." I cried reading it. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start by spring. I'd fully healed physically. I started running again, joined a local yoga class, ironically enough, and felt my strength coming back. But I was different, sharper, less patient with dismissiveness, more outspoken. I used to shrink away from confrontation. Now I ask questions, demand explanations, and won't settle for, "It's probably nothing." A few months ago, I decided to take a leap. I applied to a post-baccalaureate nursing program. When I got the acceptance email, I sat on the kitchen floor and sobbed. "I think Daniel thought something was wrong until he saw me smiling through tears," I told him. "I want to be the kind of nurse who never lets someone get ignored like I did." He said, "Then you're exactly who the world needs." We celebrated that night with takeout and cheap champagne. I kept thinking about how much had changed since that night I almost passed out in the CVS parking lot. How that pain had turned into a path. The legal case is still ongoing. Caroline says we might get a mediation date by the end of the year. I'm not expecting miracles, but I want my story to be part of the record. A reminder that anxiety isn't a catch-all diagnosis for women in pain. Every once in a while, I still get messages from strangers who read my original post. Some of them say things like, "You made me go to the ER again, and they found my cyst." Or, "I pushed for more tests and caught something early." Every time I read one of those, I feel this mix of gratitude and heartbreak. I'm glad they're okay, but I hate that they had to fight so hard to be believed. Last week, I saw Dr. Patel again for a final follow-up. She smiled and said, "Everything looks perfect. You've healed beautifully." Before I left, she hugged me and said, "You're going to make one hell of a nurse." I walked out of her office into the warm May sunlight and felt, for the first time in months, like my body belonged to me again. I don't think the anger ever fully goes away. It lives somewhere in me now, not burning, but steady, like a pilot light. It reminds me to speak up, to trust myself, and to make sure no one else gets silenced the way I did. If you've ever been brushed off, if you've ever been told it's just anxiety, I want you to know that you're not crazy. You're not dramatic, and you're not alone. You deserve care, respect, and to be heard the first time you speak. 6 months ago, I almost lost an ovary. Now, I've found my voice, and I'm never letting anyone take that from me again. Stories number 3, my family thinks I should forgive my dying dad, but he never actually said sorry. I've gone back and forth about posting this, but I can't stop thinking about it. My dad's dying. He has pancreatic cancer and was given less than 6 months a few months ago. My mom and my 2 siblings have been pushing me hard to make peace with him before he goes. But I can't, because he never really apologized for what he did to me. I grew up in Indiana, the middle kid of 3. My dad, Jack, was one of those men who never should have had kids. He was charming to everyone outside the house, but at home he was mean and cruel in a way that chipped at your soul over time. He had this temper that didn't always show as yelling. Sometimes it was silence. He'd ignore you for days over small things. Once, when I was 11, I accidentally broke a mug that had his old company logo on it. He didn't talk to me for a week. I'd try to say goodnight, and he'd just look through me like I didn't exist. When I hit high school, it got worse. He'd mock me for my weight, tell me no one would ever want me, and compare me to my sister Megan, who was thin and outgoing. He'd call her our pride and joy right in front of me. I learned to stay quiet, to move around the house like a ghost. When I was 17, he found out I'd applied to a college out of state. He told me it was a stupid idea and refused to co-sign any loans. My mom didn't stop him. I worked through school on my own, doing whatever I could, night shifts, student housing assistant jobs, anything. I left home and never really looked back. Now I'm 31. I live in Ohio with my husband. Chris, life's been okay, not perfect, but good in a calm, quiet way that I never had growing up. I didn't talk to my dad for years. My mom would update me on him here and there, mostly guilt trips disguised as concern. I'd get texts like, "He asks about you sometimes," or "He regrets how he acted." But never once did he reach out himself. Then 2 months ago, my mom called and said he was dying. She sounded small on the phone, and I'll admit, my stomach dropped when I heard it. I didn't want him to die. I just didn't want him to still have this hold over me. A week later, she told me he wanted to see me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to visit. Chris drove with me because I was shaking the whole way there. When I walked in, Dad was in a hospital bed in the living room. He'd lost so much weight for a second. He didn't even look like the same man. Megan was sitting beside him, and my brother Ryan stood near the window. Everyone looked like they were waiting for something dramatic to happen. Dad said, "Hey kiddo." I froze. He hadn't called me that since I was a child. I didn't know what to say. He started talking about random memories. When we used to rake leaves. When I won a spelling bee in 5th grade. It felt surreal. Like he'd rewritten our entire relationship in his mind to make it look normal. Then he said, "I know I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. But I hope you can forgive me." That was it. That was his big apology. No acknowledgement of what he actually did. No mention of the things he said. The years of emotional abuse. The way he made me hate myself. Just a vague, "I made mistakes," I said. "Do you even know what you're asking forgiveness for?" He blinked like he hadn't expected me to question him. Then he said, "You always were too sensitive." I think that's when something in me snapped. I stood up, told him I hoped he found peace, and walked out. My mom ran after me crying, saying, "He's dying, can't you just let it go?" Megan called me selfish. Ryan didn't say anything, just watched me leave. Since then, I've been the family villain. They text and call nonstop about how I'll regret this when he's gone. My mom says forgiveness isn't for him, it's for me. But that doesn't feel true. It feels like they want me to clean up his conscience for him so he can die feeling like a good man. I don't feel guilty for walking away. What I feel is tired. I've spent my whole life trying to earn kindness from someone who never wanted to give it. And now, everyone expects me to forget the damage because cancer made him mortal. Last week, Megan sent me a photo of the 3 of them sitting by his bed. She wrote, "We're all together except you." I didn't reply. I just sat there staring at it, realizing that for my family, forgiveness means pretending it never happened. Chris keeps telling me I don't owe him or them anything. I know he's right. But there's still this hollow ache in my chest, like losing a father I never actually had. I keep wondering if maybe I'll regret not going back before the end. But every time I picture sitting in that room again, hearing him say I made mistakes like it's enough, I feel that same old panic rise in me. I think what hurts most is how easily they all moved on. How my mom can watch me break down on the phone and still say, "He loves you." How Megan can post family photos with captions like, "Forgiveness heals," when she's never had to forgive anything like this. Sometimes, at night, I try to remember one good thing about him, one genuine moment where he made me feel loved without conditions. I can't, and maybe that's my answer. He's dying, and I don't hate him. I just don't have anything left to give. Update: it's been about 6 weeks since I last saw my dad. I wasn't planning on posting an update, but something happened that forced me to really sit with everything again. He died last Thursday. My mom called me early that morning. I saw her name flash on my phone, and before I even answered, I knew she didn't say much. Just that he passed in his sleep around 3 a.m., I said. "Okay." She started crying and asked if I was coming home for the funeral. I told her I'd think about it and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for over an hour, just staring at nothing. Chris made coffee, tried to ask if I was okay, and I couldn't answer him. I felt completely hollow, not sad, not relieved, just empty in a way I didn't know how to describe. By noon, my phone was flooded with messages from my family. Megan sent a long text about how Dad loved you no matter what, and how she hoped I'd come so we could all celebrate his life together. Ryan just said, "Mom needs you." I didn't answer either of them. That night, I found myself scrolling through old photos my mom used to email me when I was in college. Family vacations, birthdays, random stuff from when we were kids. I kept thinking, this is the family everyone else saw. The smiling one, the normal one. The one where my dad had his arm around all of us, grinning like we were some perfect little unit. But I remembered what happened after those photos were taken. The tension in the car ride home, the fights over nothing, the way he'd mock me in front of everyone for being too quiet or too moody. The day after he died, Megan called. I almost didn't pick up, but I was tired of avoiding it. She said, "He asked about you before he went to sleep. He wanted to know if you'd forgiven him." I didn't say anything. She kept going, telling me how peaceful he looked, how she held his hand until the end. I could hear the self-righteousness in her voice, the way she believed she was part of something pure and meaningful. Then she said, "You really should come to the funeral. Mom's a mess, and I think you'll regret it if you don't." That word, regret, hit me like a slap. Everyone keeps throwing it at me like it's supposed to scare me into compliance. Like if I don't follow the family script, I'll wake up one day full of remorse. But here's the truth. I've regretted things my whole life because of him. I regretted speaking up. I regretted staying silent. I regretted not being good enough, or normal enough, or quiet enough. "I'm done letting that word control me," I told her. "I'm not coming." She went quiet, then whispered, "You're heartless." That one hurt, I won't lie. But I didn't respond. I just hung up. Later my mom left me a voicemail. She said, "You don't have to forgive him, but at least come say goodbye." She sounded broken, and for a second I almost changed my mind. But I know how that story ends. I'd show up. Everyone would act polite until someone mentioned forgiveness. And then I'd be the problem again. So I didn't go. The funeral was 3 days ago. Megan posted a photo on Facebook of the three of them standing by his casket. The caption said, "We love you forever, Dad. Forgiveness is freedom." I stared at that for a long time. Forgiveness might be freedom for some people. For me, it's surrender. It means erasing what happened so everyone else can feel better. That night, Chris and I went for a walk. It was cold and quiet, the kind of air that burns your lungs a little. I told him everything. How I felt nothing when I heard. How guilty that made me feel. How part of me wanted to feel something, he said. "You don't owe grief to someone who never earned it." And that stuck with me. Because I've been confusing grief with guilt. I don't owe my dad my sadness. What I feel isn't numbness, it's peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to fix something that was never fixable. A few days later, I got an envelope in the mail from my mom. No note, just a folded piece of paper. It was a letter from my dad, dated about a week before he died. It said, "I know you're angry. I don't blame you. I can't change what I did. And maybe I don't even remember all of it. But I hope you know I always loved you, even when I didn't know how to show it. Maybe that's not enough. But it's all I have left." I read it 3 times. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was another half measure. Another way for him to say, I didn't mean it like that without taking any real responsibility. But I didn't rip it up. I put it in a box with some other old things I've kept over the years. Photos, cards, pieces of my past that still feel unfinished. Maybe one day I'll read it again and feel something different. Maybe not. I sent my mom a text after that. Just, "I got the letter, I hope you're okay." She didn't reply. But I didn't expect her to. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. For the first time in my life, the silence doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like peace. Final update. It's been 3 months since my dad's funeral. I thought everything would calm down after that. But somehow, the silence afterward has been louder than all the chaos leading up to it. I haven't spoken to my mom or siblings since the letter. I tried once about a month ago. I called my mom on her birthday. "Just to be civil," she answered, but her tone was clipped, like she was already bracing for a fight. She thanked me for calling, then immediately said, "I still don't understand why you couldn't come to the funeral." I told her I didn't want to argue, that I just wanted to wish her a happy birthday. She said, "You'll regret this one day," and hung up. That was it. I sat there holding my phone, staring at the call screen, realizing that she'd chosen her narrative and there's no room for mine in it. I've stopped trying to change her mind. For years, I kept hoping that if I explained myself clearly enough, if I said the right combination of words, she'd finally understand what it was like to grow up with a man who made me feel small every day of my life. But she can't, or won't. She's still protecting her version of him. The one who worked hard and paid the bills and did his best. I've come to realize she's as tied to his story as I was, Forgiving him lets her avoid facing her own silence all those years. Megan hasn't reached out at all. She blocked me on Facebook after I didn't comment on the funeral photo. I only found out because a mutual friend sent me a screenshot of one of her posts. A long paragraph about how forgiveness healed our family, except for one person who couldn't let go. She didn't name me, but she didn't need to. Ryan texted once. A few sentences that read like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Hope you're okay. Things are weird without you. Mom's not doing great. I don't know what to say, I replied. I'm okay. Take care of yourself. He never wrote back. That used to break my heart. Now it just feels like the natural end of something that was always cracked. I still love them, but I can't carry their version of love anymore. It's the kind that only works if I make myself smaller to fit inside it. Since all of this, therapy has become my lifeline. I started seeing someone named Karen a few weeks after the funeral. She's the first therapist who hasn't told me to find closure. She said something that stuck with me. Closure is a myth. Some doors don't close. You just learn how to stop standing in the doorway. That sentence has been echoing in my head ever since. I've been trying to build a life that doesn't orbit around pain anymore. Chris and I started taking morning walks before work. It sounds small, but it's become my favorite part of the day. There's this quiet stretch of trail near our house where you can hear the birds before the city noise starts. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. It's the kind of silence that feels safe, the opposite of the one I grew up with. I also started painting again. I hadn't touched a brush since college. But one Saturday I pulled out my old set and just started. No plan, no idea, just colors. It's messy and imperfect. But there's something healing about creating something that doesn't have to mean anything. The nightmares have mostly stopped too, for years. I used to dream about being trapped in our old house. Every door locked, every room filled with that same suffocating quiet. But lately, when those dreams start, I find a way out. I wake up before the fear settles in. I guess that's progress, sometimes though. I still get this wave of guilt out of nowhere. Usually when I see a father and daughter in public, laughing or hugging, I catch myself wondering what it would have been like to have that. To have memories that didn't feel like walking barefoot on glass. Then I remind myself that I can grieve the father I wanted without forgiving the one I had. Those two things can both be true. Last week my mom sent a card, no note. Just her signature at the bottom, and a photo tucked inside of my dad holding me as a baby. He's smiling, I'm sleeping on his chest, and it looks like love. I don't know if it was, but it looks like it. I didn't throw it away. I put it with the letter. I think part of me keeps these things because I don't want to erase him completely. For all the pain, he's still part of the story that made me who I am. But he's not the main character anymore. A few nights ago, Chris and I sat outside with a fire going. And I told him I think I'm finally ready to let go. Not in the way everyone means it. Not forgiveness, but release. Letting go of the need for closure. Of waiting for an apology that'll never come. Of the hope that one day my family will understand. He asked me if I wanted to reach out to them again. I said, no, not right now, maybe not ever. And for the first time, saying that didn't feel defiant. It felt peaceful. I don't hate my family. I don't even hate my dad. I just don't have the energy to keep reopening old wounds to prove that I'm bleeding. I've realized forgiveness isn't something you owe to the person who hurt you. Sometimes it's something you give to yourself when you finally walk away. So that's where I am now. Not angry, not bitter, just done. And maybe that's what healing actually looks like. Not some perfect ending where everyone hugs it out, but learning how to live quietly without needing anyone else's approval to feel at peace. I think my dad would have called that being too sensitive. But maybe that's exactly what saved me. Stories number 4. My little sister opened my birthday present before I even saw it. I turned 27 last weekend, and what should have been a chill, low-stress birthday ended up turning into a family drama that's still somehow going. It sounds dumb when I try to explain it out loud, but I swear it's not about the gift. It's about the principle. I'm the oldest of 3. My younger brother Matt is 24, and my little sister Lily just turned 17. My parents had her later in life, so she's still living at home, and we've always had a big age gap. I moved out at 19 for college, and ever since then, I've had kind of a visiting aunt relationship with her instead of a sibling one. I love her to death, but she's spoiled. I don't say that to be mean. It's just true. My parents had more money by the time she came around, so she's grown up with things I never had. They also coddle her because she's the baby. I was working part-time jobs and paying rent in college while she got her first car handed to her on her 16th birthday. Again, it's not her fault. But it's created this weird dynamic where she's not used to being told no. Anyway, for my birthday this year, my parents wanted to do a small dinner at their house. Nothing big, just immediate family. My boyfriend, Ethan, and a couple close family friends. I told them I didn't want a big deal, but my mom loves any excuse to decorate and cook. When I arrived, everyone was already there, and there was a pile of wrapped gifts on the dining table. My mom greeted me with a hug and said, "Lily has been so excited to give you her present. She couldn't wait." I didn't think much of it until I walked in and saw Lily sitting on the couch, holding what looked like a piece of wrapping paper. I asked what she was doing, and she said, "Oh, I wanted to make sure you'd like it before everyone saw." I blinked. "Wait, what?" She pointed to a gift bag next to her. "That one's from me." I opened it to check. I walked over and saw that the tissue paper had been completely torn out. The tag ripped off, and the little box inside was already open. Inside was a necklace, a really pretty one. Actually, I looked at her and said, "You opened it." She shrugged. "Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it looked good before I gave it to you. You always care about stuff matching your clothes, so I didn't want to give you something ugly." The way she said it, like she'd done me a favor, just set me off. "Lily," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "you don't open other people's gifts." "That's really rude." She immediately rolled her eyes. "It's not a big deal. It's your gift from me, not from someone else." My mom jumped in right away. "Honey, she was just excited. Don't make this into a big thing." But it wasn't about the gift. It was the fact that it felt like every boundary I try to set with Lily gets brushed off because she's the youngest. So I said, "I'm not mad about the necklace, but I'm setting a boundary. Don't open my stuff without me, ever." "It's not okay." Lily's face twisted like I'd just scolded a toddler. "Oh my God, you're so dramatic." Then she actually laughed and said, "You act like I stole something," I told her. "It's not about stealing, it's about respect." The room went quiet, and my mom tried to smooth it over again, saying, "It's just a misunderstanding." She meant well. I could feel my face getting hot. I didn't want to start a fight on my birthday. So I said, "Okay, whatever," and sat down for dinner. But the tension didn't go away. Ethan tried to make small talk to lighten the mood, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. Lily was sulking the whole time, and my mom kept giving me drop-it looks. After dinner, when we were packing up, Lily came over and said, "You didn't even say thank you for my gift," I said. "I do appreciate it, but I already told you I didn't like that you opened it. It took away the surprise." She scoffed. "You're so ungrateful. You're almost 30, and you're mad because someone opened a bag early?" Ethan stepped in at that point gently and said, "Lily, she's just saying she wanted to open it herself." "It's her birthday," Lily snapped back. "No one asked you," and stormed off. My dad pulled me aside later and said, "You know how your sister is. Don't let her get under your skin," I told him. "That's exactly the problem. Everyone keeps excusing her behavior. She's 17, old enough to know better." He just sighed and said, "It's not worth the fight, but to me it was. Because every time something like this happens, I'm expected to be the mature one, while Lily never faces consequences." 2 days later, my mom called to check in, except really, it was to tell me I'd hurt Lily's feelings. She said Lily cried after I left and said she felt embarrassed and attacked. I said, "Mom, I didn't attack her. I told her not to open other people's gifts," Mom replied. "Well, you could have said it more kindly. You know she's sensitive." That was the final straw, I told my mom. I'm done being the bad guy just because I don't baby her. If Lily's going to act grown, she can handle being told when she's wrong. We haven't talked much since. My dad texted me a few times, trying to smooth things over. But my mom and Lily have gone quiet. Ethan keeps saying I did nothing wrong, and I know he's right. But it still feels awful. I didn't want drama. I wanted one peaceful birthday. It's been a week now. Lily finally texted me yesterday. She said, "Sorry for opening your gift. I was just excited. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I almost left it at that. But I decided to reply honestly. I said, 'Thank you for saying that. I know you didn't mean harm, but I just need you to respect my stuff next time.' That's all." She heart-reacted it and didn't say anything else. But I'll take it. I don't hate her. She's my little sister, and I know part of this is her age. But I'm not going to keep letting her cross lines just because everyone else does. Sometimes setting boundaries makes you look like the villain, especially in families that protect the baby no matter what. But honestly, I'd rather be the villain with boundaries than the doormat who keeps quiet. Update. It's been about a month since my birthday, and the whole gift opening fiasco. and I honestly didn't expect it to still be a thing. But in true family fashion, small issues have a way of growing roots when no one actually talks them out properly. After my last post, things between my mom, Lily and me were awkward. There was no yelling, no official fight, just this uncomfortable coldness. Like we were all pretending everything was fine but tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. My dad and brother Matt stayed mostly neutral. Ethan kept telling me to just give it time, but I was tired of giving it time. That's basically code in my family for sweep it under the rug and pretend it never happened. About 2 weeks after my birthday, I got a call from my mom asking if I could come over for Sunday dinner. She said Lily wanted to make things right. I agreed because, honestly, I didn't want to hold a grudge against my 17-year-old sister. I just wanted some accountability and respect. When I got there, it was tense. Lily barely looked at me at first. She was sitting at the table, scrolling on her phone while my mom cooked and my dad fiddled with the grill outside. I sat down across from her and said, "Hey." She gave me a small smile. "Hey." After a few minutes of silence, she said, "I'm sorry again about your gift thing. I really didn't mean to make you mad." Her tone wasn't offensive this time. She actually sounded sincere. So I told her, "Thank you. I wasn't mad at the gift. I just wanted to feel like my things were respected, you know?" She nodded. "Yeah, I just thought I was doing something nice." That moment could have been it. Apology, understanding, moving on. But my mom had to chime in from the kitchen. She said, "See, I told you she didn't mean anything by it. You two are just too sensitive about each other." I froze for a second because that's exactly the problem. Everything gets brushed off as too sensitive. I didn't want to start another argument, so I just said, "We're fine, Mom," and let it go. Dinner was actually okay after that. We joked, we ate, we laughed a little. I left feeling lighter, like maybe things were normal again. But then, the following weekend, my mom called me again. And guess what? She was upset. Apparently, Lily had posted something on her Instagram story that said, "Can't make anyone happy no matter how hard you try. Some people just live to be mad." It didn't mention me by name, but half the family follows her. And of course, my aunt sent it to me with a emoji. I didn't even want to engage. But my mom called that night saying, "I thought you two made up. What happened now?" I told her, "Nothing happened." She posted something vague, and it's childish. "I'm not playing that game." Mom sighed and said, "You know how teenagers are." And that's when I kinda lost it. I said, "Mom, she's not 12, she's almost an adult. If she's old enough to drive and post cryptic stuff online, she's old enough to be accountable when people notice." There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "You've been really harsh with her lately." That made me laugh, but not in a happy way. "Harsh? I'm setting normal boundaries. You're just not used to anyone telling her no." That ended the conversation. We didn't talk again for almost a week. During that time, Lily texted me once saying, "Sorry about the post. It wasn't really about you," I replied. "Okay," because I didn't believe her, but I didn't want to keep dragging it out either. Then last weekend, my dad invited everyone to his place for a barbecue since the weather was nice. Ethan came with me, and Matt brought his girlfriend, Rachel. Things were fine at first. Lily was polite, kind of quiet. My mom acted like nothing ever happened. But later in the afternoon, I overheard Lily talking to Rachel about the whole situation. She said, "I swear I just opened the bag to look at it. My sister acts like I robbed her," Rachel said. "Oh wow, I'd probably be annoyed too, though." And Lily went, "Yeah, well, she's been bossy my whole life. She always thinks she's better because she's older." I didn't say anything then. I just walked away and joined Ethan near the grill. But later that night, when I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The truth is, Lily's half right, I am bossy sometimes. I've spent so much of my life being the responsible one that it bleeds into everything. But that doesn't mean I'm wrong for wanting respect. It's not about control. It's about being treated like my boundaries matter. So instead of bottling it up again, I decided to call her the next day. I said, "Hey, I overheard what you said to Rachel yesterday." She got quiet. "Oh, I'm not mad," I told her. "I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to act like I'm better than you, but sometimes you cross lines and then act like it's not a big deal. That makes me feel like my feelings don't count." She didn't say anything for a long time, then finally said, "I don't mean to make you feel that way. I just hate when you talk to me like I'm a kid." That hit me too, because I realized we've both been stuck in our roles. She's always been the baby, and I've always been the adult. Neither of us ever really met in the middle. We ended up talking for over an hour. I told her that when I left home, I missed a lot of her growing up, so I still see her as that little kid who followed me around everywhere. And she admitted that sometimes she feels like I look down on her. It wasn't some magical fix, but it felt honest, real. Since then, things have actually gotten better. We've been texting more, sending each other memes, talking about random stuff. She even asked me for advice about college applications last week, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was talking down to her. I felt like I was talking with her. I guess that's what boundaries really do. They don't push people away. They just create space for respect to grow. I don't regret setting mine. I think Lily needed to hear it. And honestly, so did my parents. The family still treats her like the golden child. But that's not my battle anymore. I've stopped trying to fix the family dynamic and started focusing on just having a healthy one-on-one relationship with my sister. It's weird. But in a way, that messy birthday argument was the best thing that could have happened. It forced both of us to grow up a little. Now when I think back on it, I don't see the drama. I just see two sisters figuring out how to be adults together for the first time. And that feels kind of good. Final update. It's been about 6 months since my birthday. And I wanted to post one last update because everything that came from that tiny, stupid incident with the gift has honestly reshaped my whole family dynamic. And my relationship with Lily more than I ever thought possible. When I first wrote, I was angry. Not because of a necklace or torn tissue paper, but because I felt invisible. Like my boundaries only mattered if they were convenient for everyone else. It's funny how something as small as a gift bag can open the door to much bigger things you've been avoiding for years. After that second update, things between Lily and me started genuinely improving. We texted more, started FaceTiming once a week, and she even came to stay with me and Ethan for a weekend during her spring break. That visit ended up being kind of a turning point. She came over on a Friday afternoon with a duffel bag and a look that said she'd just had a fight with Mom. She tried to play it off, but later that night she told me Mom had been yelling because Lily missed curfew the week before. Apparently, Mom grounded her, took her car keys, and made a huge deal about how ungrateful she was. I listened without taking sides. But what she said next caught me off guard. She said, "I get now why you moved out so fast." That made me laugh. But it also made me feel a little sad. I told her I didn't leave because I hated our parents. I left because I needed independence, and I wanted to be treated like an adult. I said, "You'll want that too one day, but you have to earn it, not demand it." She nodded and said, "Yeah, I think I finally get that." That weekend was surprisingly peaceful. We cooked, watched movies, went shopping, and talked about everything. Boys, college, family, even that infamous birthday dinner. She admitted she'd been embarrassed more than angry that day, and that my reaction made her feel like she couldn't do anything right. I told her I never wanted her to feel that way, but that part of growing up is learning when you've overstepped. She said, "I guess I had to screw up to get it." It felt like the first real, grown-up conversation we'd ever had when she left on Sunday. She hugged me tighter than usual and said, "Thanks for letting me stay. It felt nice being around you without fighting." A few days later, my mom called me out of nowhere. I thought she was going to start in on Lily again, but instead she said, "I just want to thank you for spending time with your sister. She's been talking about that weekend non-stop. I think it really helped her." We ended up talking for almost an hour. For the first time in a long time, my mom actually listened instead of defending everything Lily did. I told her that I understood she wanted to protect her youngest, but that sometimes protection turns into enabling. Mom didn't argue. She just said quietly, "You might be right." That small moment changed a lot. Since then, my mom has been more open to hearing both sides instead of always defaulting to Lily's. My dad, bless him, has always been the calm middleman, and I think he's just relieved we're finally not all walking on eggshells. Fast forward to last month. Lily graduated high school. The ceremony was outdoors, sunny and hot, and I swear she looked like a completely different person walking across that stage. More confident, more grounded afterward. We all went out to dinner to celebrate. She gave me a small gift, a little silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm. I laughed and said, "You didn't open it first, did you?" And she smirked. "Nope, I let you do the honors this time." It was such a silly, sweet moment, but it meant the world to me. Later that night, after everyone went home, she texted me, "You were right about boundaries. They don't mean you hate someone. They just mean you respect yourself." I'm glad you didn't stop pushing me to learn that. I cried when I read that, because for years I felt like I was shouting into a void. Like every time I spoke up, I was the problem. And hearing that from her felt like this huge weight finally lifted. We still have our moments, of course. She's 17 and moody sometimes. And I still slip into big sister mode when she does something impulsive. But there's a new kind of balance now. Mutual respect, not hierarchy. Ethan keeps joking that my birthday meltdown ended up being the best therapy session our family never asked for. And honestly, he's right, it forced everyone, me, my parents, and even Lily, to look at the way we communicate. The biggest change, though, has been in me. I used to avoid confrontation, thinking keeping the peace was the mature thing to do. But I've learned that peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's just resentment wearing a polite smile. Setting that one boundary felt small, but it taught me something massive. Boundaries don't break relationships, they define them. I never expected a torn-open birthday present to become the thing that finally helped me and my sister start understanding each other. But here we are, laughing, texting, sending each other memes, and planning a trip together before she leaves for college next year. If you told me 6 months ago that Lily and I would be this close, I wouldn't have believed you. But sometimes, you have to go through a little chaos to find clarity. And now, when I think about that night, I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel grateful. Because that was the moment everything finally started to change for the better. Stories number 5. My sister lost it over my birthday dinner. And I'm still wondering if I'm the crazy one. I turned 32 last week, and I wanted to celebrate in the most low-key way possible. Good food, a few close friends, and a night where I didn't have to be Aunt Jess or the responsible one. I love my family, but lately every get-together turns into babysitting duty. My sister Erin has 2 kids, Olivia who's 6 and Carter who's 3. And as much as I adore them, every family dinner ends with someone crying, something spilled, or me trying to keep Carter from feeding crayons to the dog. So this year, I planned something different. A quiet dinner downtown at a nice Italian place called Il Campo, with my boyfriend Mark and a few friends from work. The restaurant has one of those candle-lit, adult atmospheres, soft music, expensive wine, and no kids menu. I made a reservation for 6 and even splurged on a private table by the window. I sent out the invites a week ahead. Mark, my best friend Dana, 2 co-workers, Ryan and Felicia, and Erin. I texted her, "Hey, doing dinner for my birthday next Friday 7 p.m. at Il Campo. Adults only this time. Just want a chill night." She didn't reply right away, which was weird for her, because Erin usually responds to everything in 10 seconds flat. The next day she wrote, "So you don't want Olivia and Carter there?" I replied, "It's more of an adult thing. I figured you'd enjoy a night off." She sent back one of those passive-aggressive, "Wow, okay," texts. I could already feel the storm brewing. Friday came, and I was genuinely excited. I'd gotten a new dress. Mark surprised me with flowers, and for once, I felt like the night was going to be easy. Everyone showed up on time, except Erin. She texted at 7:15 saying she was parking. When she walked in, she had both kids with her. I thought maybe she was just dropping by to say hello before heading home, or before her babysitter arrived. But nope, she sat down, pulled a coloring book from her purse, and said, "Hope it's okay, I couldn't find a sitter." Olivia immediately started singing something from Frozen at full volume while Carter banged a spoon on his water glass like he was in a percussion band. The waiter gave me that tight smile that said, "We're definitely not a family restaurant." But okay, I leaned toward Erin and whispered, "I thought we agreed this was adults only." She shrugged. "You said that, but I couldn't find anyone to watch them. Besides, they wanted to see their aunt on her birthday. The thing is, Erin has a ton of support. Our mom lives 15 minutes away and watches the kids all the time, but Erin hates asking her for favors unless it's convenient for her." I said, "You could have called Mom. She would have watched them." Erin shot me this look and said, "I didn't want to bother her. And honestly, you're being kind of rude. They're your niece and nephew." Meanwhile, Carter had poured half a glass of water onto the tablecloth, and Olivia was trying to climb into Mark's lap because she wanted to see his watch. I was mortified. Dinner went downhill fast. My coworkers tried to be polite, but you could tell they were uncomfortable. Felicia accidentally stepped on a crayon that rolled under the table, and Ryan spilled his wine trying to move his plate away from Carter's wandering hands. The waiter came over and asked if we wanted any kids' meals, and Erin said, "Oh, they'll just share my pasta." Except when it came out, Carter refused to eat it because it was too green, and Olivia complained it wasn't mac and cheese. Erin spent half the night arguing with them, then scrolling on her phone while Mark and I awkwardly tried to keep the conversation going. When dessert came, I ordered tiramisu for everyone. The restaurant brought out a tiny candle on mine and sang a quiet, "Happy birthday," Olivia shouted. "It's not fair, I want to blow the candle." Aaron laughed like it was cute and said, "Let her, she loves birthdays." So yes, my niece blew out my candle at my own birthday dinner. Everyone clapped awkwardly, and I just sat there smiling because I didn't want to make a scene. But inside, I felt like a balloon slowly deflating. After the check came, Mark pulled me aside near the door and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded, but he knew I wasn't. When we got outside, Aaron hugged me and said, "Wasn't that fun? The kids had such a great time," I said. "Aaron, I told you it was adults only." She immediately got defensive. "Well, I'm sorry for being a mother, Jess. Not all of us have the luxury of just ditching responsibilities whenever we want." That stung. She got into her SUV and drove off before I could say anything else. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the couch with Mark, staring at the unopened birthday gift bag she'd left behind. Inside was a coffee mug that said, "Best aunt ever." I didn't even know how to feel. The next morning, my mom called. "So, I heard there was a bit of drama last night." Apparently Aaron had already vented to her, saying I embarrassed her by scolding her in front of her kids. Mom asked gently, "Couldn't you have just let it go for one night?" I told her everything. How Aaron ignored my message, brought the kids, and acted like I was the bad guy for wanting a peaceful dinner. Mom sighed and said, "You know how she is? She's sensitive. That's the thing. Aaron has always been like this. When we were kids, she'd ruin my birthday cake trying to help, or show up late and make it about her. But now, because she has children, she hides behind the mom card anytime someone calls her out." 2 days later, I texted her, "I love the kids, but next time please don't bring them if I say adults only. It makes things awkward," she responded. "Wow, guess family doesn't matter to you anymore." We haven't talked since. She's posted a few passive-aggressive things on Facebook like, "Some people forget who helped them when they needed babysitters," which made zero sense because I've babysat her kids more times than I can count. Mark thinks I should give it time and that she'll calm down, but I'm honestly over it. I spent years bending over backward to make Aaron happy, attending every recital, every birthday, every meltdown. I finally wanted one night for myself. And somehow I'm the selfish one. A few nights ago, Dana and Felicia invited me out for drinks to cheer me up. We laughed about the chaos of that dinner, and Ryan joked that he still had crayon marks on his shoe. Then Dana said something that really stuck. "You're allowed to have boundaries, Jess. You're allowed to have a life that isn't about your sister's kids." I've been thinking about that ever since. I love my niece and nephew more than anything. But I'm not their second mom. I'm their aunt, which means I get to have my own life too. I don't know if Aaron and I will ever see eye to eye on that. She's a good person deep down, but she's wrapped up in the idea that motherhood automatically makes her the center of everyone's universe. I'm just tired of orbiting around her. For now, I'm focusing on myself. Mark and I are planning a weekend trip to Nashville next month. No kids, no drama, just live music and sleep-ins, and maybe next year, I'll celebrate my birthday somewhere Aaron can't crash. Somewhere with a firm, "No children allowed" sign on the door, because I deserve one night where I can just be Jess. Not Aunt Jess, not the family mediator, just me. It's been about 3 weeks since that disastrous birthday dinner, and things between my sister and me have only gotten weirder. I thought time would cool things down, but if anything, it's made the tension worse. I keep going back and forth between feeling guilty and feeling completely justified. I guess I just need to get it all out somewhere. So here's what's happened since. The weekend after my birthday, I decided to reach out again. I sent Erin a simple text. "Hey, can we talk? I don't want this to keep being awkward." She didn't reply. Instead, she posted a photo on Facebook of her kids baking cookies with the caption, "Nothing better than spending time with the people who actually appreciate you." I didn't respond. I just stared at it for a long time, trying to decide if she was intentionally trying to provoke me, or if it was just another one of her subtle messages. My mom, of course, saw it too and called me that night saying, "Your sister's just emotional, you two should make up." I told her I tried. But Erin wasn't interested. Mom sighed and said, "She feels like you don't include her anymore. You used to do everything together, and she's not wrong. Erin and I used to be incredibly close. We grew up in a small town outside St. Louis, just 2 years apart, and we were practically glued at the hip. But things started to change after she had her second kid. Every conversation became about diapers. daycare, or how tired she was. Anytime I tried to talk about my life, she'd interrupt with something like, "You'll understand when you're a mom." That line has always bothered me. Like my experiences don't count because I don't have children. Anyway, a few days after that call, I ran into her unexpectedly at Target. I was there to grab a few things after work, and she was in the toy aisle with Olivia and Carter. The moment she saw me, her face tightened. I smiled anyway and said, "Hey!" She said, "Oh, hey," in that tone people use when they're pretending not to be mad. I asked how the kids were, and Olivia ran over to hug me. Carter handed me a tiny plastic dinosaur. For a second, everything felt normal again. Then Aaron said, "We were just talking about how Aunt Jess doesn't want to see you guys anymore." I froze. Olivia looked up at me with big eyes and said, "You don't?" My stomach dropped. I said, "Of course I do, sweetheart." Then I looked at Aaron and said quietly, "That's not fair." She shrugged. "I'm just being honest. You said you didn't want them around." I felt like screaming. I said I didn't want kids at my birthday dinner. "That's not the same thing." She rolled her eyes and said, "Whatever, Jess, you've changed. You act like you're too good for us now." That was the moment I realized she wasn't hearing me. She was only hearing her own version of events. I told her I wasn't going to argue in the middle of Target and walked away. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my basket. When I got home, Mark could tell I was upset. I told him what happened, and he said, "You need to stop chasing her. You've apologized, you've explained, and she's choosing to stay mad. That's not on you." He's right, but it's hard to let go of the guilt. Aaron's kids mean the world to me, and the idea that she's painting me as the aunt who doesn't care kills me. Last weekend, Mom organized a family dinner at her house, and I hesitated about going, but she begged, saying, "Please come. We're all adults. Maybe you can patch things up." I agreed, thinking maybe it was time to try one more time. The second I walked in, I could tell the air was tense. Aaron barely looked at me. The kids ran up for hugs, and I melted for a minute, thinking maybe this wouldn't be so bad. At dinner, things were polite but strained. I made small talk, complimented Aaron's new haircut, asked about Olivia's school play. She answered in one-word sentences. Then, when Mom brought out dessert, a simple chocolate cake, Aaron made a little jab. She said, "Don't worry, Jess. I'll make sure my kids don't blow out your candles this time." The room went silent. My mom said softly, "Aaron," but she just laughed and added, "What?" "It's a joke." It wasn't. I kept my composure, but when dinner ended, I pulled her aside in the kitchen. I said, "Why are you still doing this? I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted one quiet dinner." She crossed her arms and said, "You made me feel like my kids weren't welcome. Like I'm an inconvenience," I said. "That's not what I said. But sometimes I want to be more than an aunt. Sometimes I want to just be me." She didn't say anything for a while, then finally muttered, "You wouldn't understand. You don't have kids." That line again, like a wall, slammed down between us. I realized then that she doesn't want to understand. She wants me to validate her, to make her feel like her entire identity as a mom comes first, even at my expense. So I told her, "You're right, I don't have kids. But that doesn't mean I don't deserve respect." She looked away, and I could tell I wasn't getting through. So I just said goodbye, hugged my mom, and left. That night, Mark poured me a glass of wine, and I just sat there staring at my phone, wondering how things got so bad between two sisters who used to tell each other everything. Dana called the next day and said something that hit me harder than I expected. "You can't control how she sees you, Jess. You can only control how you show up." She's right, so that's what I've been trying to do. Show up for myself. I haven't blocked Aaron or anything, but I've stopped initiating. I still send the kids little postcards and stickers in the mail because they shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. But I'm done trying to fix something that only I seem to care about fixing. Funny thing, ever since all this happened, I've been reevaluating my boundaries with other people too. At work, I stopped volunteering for every extra task. With my friends, I've started saying no when I'm tired instead of overextending. It's like Aaron's meltdown forced me to see how much I've been shrinking myself to keep everyone else comfortable. Mark and I are still planning our trip to Nashville, and I told him I want to leave my phone off the whole weekend. Just music, food, and each other, he said. That sounds like the best birthday gift you could give yourself. And maybe he's right, because at the end of the day, the real issue wasn't the kids, or the dinner, or even the candle. It was that for years, I let my sister's chaos run my life, and the moment I tried to step outside it, she took it as rejection. I hope one day she sees that it wasn't about her kids. It was about me wanting to breathe. Maybe she'll come around. Maybe she won't. But for the first time in a long time, I'm not chasing her approval. I'm just finally living on my own terms. It's been almost 6 months since that whole birthday fiasco, and reading back through my original post feels surreal. I've gone through every emotion possible. Guilt, anger, sadness, relief. But now I think I've finally reached something like peace. For a while, Erin and I didn't talk at all. No texts, no calls, no social media interaction beyond her occasional vague posts that I tried not to read too deeply into. Mom would mention her sometimes, and I'd nod, trying to sound neutral. But every time her name came up, I'd feel that familiar ache, like losing a limb you didn't know you relied on. Then in July, I got a call from my mom while I was at work. She sounded worried. Carter, my nephew, had fallen off his bike and needed a few stitches on his chin. Nothing major, thank God, but Erin was at the ER and stressed out. Mom asked if I could swing by to drop off some snacks and a charger since Erin forgot hers. At first I hesitated. I didn't want to make things awkward or seem like I was inserting myself into her space, but something in my gut told me to go. When I got there, Erin looked exhausted, hair in a messy bun, still in her scrubs from her nursing shift. Carter was in a little hospital bed watching cartoons with a huge bandage on his chin. The moment he saw me, he said, "Aunt Jess," like nothing had ever happened. My heart cracked open. Erin didn't say much at first. I quietly handed her the charger and snacks. She mumbled, "Thanks," without looking up. I was about to leave when she sighed and said, "You don't have to go," so I stayed. We sat there in silence for a while, listening to the beeping machines and Carter's giggles. Finally, Erin said, "I'm sorry for what I said at Mom's house, about you not understanding. That was crappy of me." I didn't say anything right away because I wanted to make sure I didn't respond out of emotion. I finally said, "I know you've had a lot on your plate, but you really hurt me." She nodded, eyes wet. "I know, I think I was jealous. You get to have this freedom I don't have anymore, and I wanted you to want my kids around because they're the best part of me." That hit me hard. I told her, "I love your kids, always have, but sometimes I just want to feel like me too. Not just Aunt Jess." She squeezed my hand and said, "I get it now. I think I was scared of being left behind. That broke me, because I realized, all this time I'd been so focused on my boundaries and frustration, I hadn't thought about how motherhood had made her feel invisible too. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it gave me perspective. We talked for hours after that, about old times, about how we both missed each other, about how being adults with different lives doesn't have to mean growing apart. When we left the hospital, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. Since then, things have been cautiously better. Not perfect. Erin still has her moments, and I still protect my boundaries. But there's more respect now. She doesn't assume I'll drop everything to attend every kid-related thing, and I make a conscious effort to show up when I can. On my birthday this year, she surprised me by inviting Mark and me over for dinner. Just us. "No kids," she said. "They're with Mom tonight." "You deserve a grown-up birthday," I almost cried. She even made my favorite lasagna from scratch, which is a big deal for her. At one point during dinner, she said quietly, "I never realized how much I relied on you to feel grounded. When you pulled back, I panicked, but I'm glad you didn't let me drag you down with me." I told her I was just glad we found our way back. There was one especially sweet moment after dessert. She pulled out a small box and handed it to me. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny charm that said, "Auntie J," she said, "from Olivia and Carter." They picked it out. It's funny. That little bracelet meant more to me than any apology ever could. It was her way of saying she sees me now, both as her sister and as my own person. Since then, we've started rebuilding, slowly but surely. I go to the kids' soccer games when I can, and she and I have started having monthly sister brunches. No spouses, no kids. Sometimes we just vent about life. Sometimes we talk about TV shows. Sometimes we just sit quietly with our coffee, both of us realizing how much we missed this. The biggest shift, though, is in me. That whole situation taught me how crucial it is to stand up for your own space, even when it means disappointing people you love. Boundaries don't mean rejection. They mean survival. And in a strange way, it taught me empathy, too. Erin wasn't just being controlling, she was drowning, trying to hold on to a version of our closeness that no longer fit. Once I stopped taking that personally, it got easier to forgive. Mark likes to joke that my family drama gave me main character growth. Maybe he's right. Because for the first time in years, I'm not walking on eggshells around anyone. I'm just me, a sister, an aunt, a partner, and a woman who finally learned how to balance all of it without losing herself in the process. And maybe that's the best ending I could have hoped for. Stories number 6. My husband's second phone changed everything. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who snoops. I always believed that if you trusted someone enough to marry them, you trusted them enough to stay out of their stuff. But that belief got tested the night I found my husband's second phone. I'm 30. My husband Mark is 29. We've been married for almost 4 years. Together for 6. We met through mutual friends at a summer barbecue in Austin. He was funny, charming in a quiet way, the kind of guy who doesn't need to talk a lot to make people listen. I was drawn to that calmness because my life back then felt like chaos. Bad roommates, a stressful job, everything always half falling apart. He felt like stability. We moved in together a year later, got married after 2. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I thought it was solid. We had little fights about cleaning or finances, but nothing major. He worked in IT for a logistics company, often from home, and I worked as a graphic designer. We had our routines, coffee together every morning, takeout Fridays, lazy Sunday hikes with our dog, Bailey. It was comfortable. The kind of life that makes you feel like you're doing things right. About 2 months ago, I started noticing small things that didn't feel right. He started keeping his main phone face down all the time. When I'd ask who he was texting, he'd say it was work stuff. Sometimes he'd leave the room to take calls, which wasn't like him. One night, he said he had to stay late at the office because of an emergency server issue. He doesn't usually go in after hours, but I didn't question it, around 9 p.m. I texted to ask if he wanted me to keep dinner warm. He didn't reply. Around 11 he came home, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I mentioned it, and he laughed it off, saying one of his co-workers, a woman named Rachel, hugged him goodbye because they'd finally fixed the system issue. It sounded weird, but I let it go. A week later, I found the phone. It was a Wednesday, and I was doing laundry. His work bag was on the floor, and I was moving it out of the way when I heard something thump inside. I opened it and saw a small black phone. Older model, no case, half-charged. My first thought was that it was an old work phone he forgot to return. I pressed the power button, and it unlocked without a passcode. That's when my stomach dropped. The wallpaper wasn't a generic background. It was a photo of him and some woman I didn't know. They were sitting close in what looked like a restaurant booth. Her head was leaning on his shoulder, and he was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. I don't know what possessed me, but I started scrolling. There were text messages, lots of them. Her name was saved as L. The first one I read said, "I miss waking up next to you," another said. "When are you telling her?" I sat there, frozen, trying to breathe. There were photos too, selfies of them together. Hotel rooms, dinners, little videos of them laughing in the car. It felt like my chest was caving in. He'd been having an affair. I don't remember much of what I did next. I think I just put everything back, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall until he came home. When he walked in, I asked him straight out, "Who's L?" He froze, completely still, like he was trying to figure out how much I knew. Then he said, "What are you talking about?" I told him I found the phone. He didn't even try to deny it. He just sighed and sat down across from me, rubbing his face. He said, "I was going to tell you." That line, "I was going to tell you," is still ringing in my head. I asked how long it had been going on. He said almost a year. That it started when he was traveling for work and met her through a client. He swore it was never about love, that he'd been confused and unhappy. He said it was over now, that he just hadn't figured out how to tell me about it. I laughed. I don't even know why. Maybe because the idea that he planned to confess felt ridiculous. The phone was still active. They were still texting that same day. When I called him out on it, he didn't fight back. He just said, "I don't know what's wrong with me." I think that was the moment I realized he wasn't the man I thought I married. Not because he cheated, but because he sounded detached, like he'd already moved on emotionally. I told him to pack a bag and go stay somewhere else. He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away. I didn't cry until I heard the door close behind him. The next few days were a blur. He texted constantly, begging to talk, saying he'd end things with her, that he loved me and made a terrible mistake. I didn't respond. I went through every stage of grief in a loop. Anger, sadness, disbelief, numbness, then back again, a week later. Elle messaged me from her number. She said she didn't know he was married until recently, and that she'd already cut things off. She wrote, "I'm sorry, I didn't want to be the reason someone got hurt." I didn't reply to her either. Mark showed up at our house 2 days later. I didn't let him in, but I talked to him through the screen door. He said he'd started therapy, that he was trying to figure himself out. He wanted to fix our marriage, said we could go to counseling together. I told him I didn't know if there was anything left to fix. He started crying. It was the first time I'd ever seen him cry, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered that I'd been crying alone for days because of what he chose to do. He left again after that. It's been about 3 weeks since then. I filed for separation. I haven't decided if I'll divorce him yet, but I can't picture a version of life where I trust him again. Every time my phone buzzes, I think about that second phone, about all the lies tucked into its messages. Sometimes I replay our marriage in my head, trying to see where it cracked. Maybe it was never as strong as I thought. Maybe I ignored the signs because I wanted so badly to believe that we were solid, that love was enough. Now I know that love isn't a shield. It's just a choice you keep making every day. And once someone stops making it, everything else falls apart. I'm not sure what's next. I still have Bailey. And my friends have been amazing. Chris and Amanda came over last weekend and helped me repaint the living room. Just to make it feel new, I packed up some of Mark's things in boxes and left them in the garage. He texted that he'd come get them soon. I didn't reply. The phone, the second one, is still in my dresser drawer. Part of me wants to throw it away, but another part keeps it as proof that I didn't imagine it, that the betrayal was real, that I'm not crazy. I think I'll know I'm ready to move on when I finally stop needing proof. For now, I'm just trying to breathe, one day at a time. Update. It's been almost 2 months since I found Mark's second phone, and the initial shock has started to fade, though it's been replaced by something heavier, reality, the kind that sits on your chest in the morning and makes you forget how to breathe for a second. I haven't spoken to him in weeks, at least not directly. After I filed for separation, he tried to reach out a few times, texts, a couple of emails, even a handwritten letter that showed up in the mail. I didn't respond to any of it. I think he finally got the message because the communication stopped. The letter was the hardest to read. He wrote that he missed me, that he was in therapy, that he was understanding things about himself he never realized before. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but hoped one day we could talk without anger. He ended it with, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I ruined it." I sat on my porch and read that line a dozen times. Then I folded the letter, put it in the same drawer as that phone, and went inside. The house feels different now. It's quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It's the kind of quiet that comes after something breaks. A silence that hums, reminding you of what's missing. I moved our wedding photo off the hallway wall. There's just a faint square outline where it used to hang. I tell myself I'll replace it with something new eventually. But for now, I leave it empty. It feels honest that way. The first real turning point came about 3 weeks ago when I met with a lawyer to go over the separation papers. Sitting there across the desk, listening to her list all the steps. Financial disclosures, division of property, next steps if I wanted a divorce. It hit me that this was my life now. I wasn't a wife anymore. Not really. I was someone untangling herself from the person she thought she'd spend forever with. She asked if there was any chance of reconciliation, and for the first time, I said no without hesitation. It felt final, but also freeing. In the meantime, I've been focusing on small things to make the house feel like mine again. I rearranged the furniture, painted the kitchen cabinets, bought new sheets, little things that don't sound like much but make a difference. I even took Bailey on a solo road trip to Colorado. Just me, the dog, and a rented cabin for a long weekend. I hiked, read, cooked simple meals, and went to bed early. There was something healing about waking up in a place where no one knew me as Mark's wife. While I was there, he texted again. Just one message. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're okay." I didn't reply. I sat on the porch, looked at the mountains, and realized that maybe he was sorry. But that didn't change what he did. You can't build a marriage on apologies that come after the damage is done. When I got back home, there was an envelope waiting in the mail from someone I didn't recognize. It was from Elle. She wrote that she wanted to apologize again, that she hadn't known he was married until months into their relationship. She said when she found out, she ended things and told him to come clean. She admitted that she'd seen me once in person when she dropped something off for him at work. Before she knew who I was, she said I looked kind. That part made my stomach twist. I don't hate her. I thought I would, but I don't. She was living in the same illusion I was. The only difference is that she got out before I did. I didn't write her back either. There's nothing left to say lately. People keep asking if I think I'll ever date again. The truth is, I don't even know if I want to. It's not that I've given up on love. I just don't trust my instincts anymore. How do you believe in your judgment after something like this? I thought I knew Mark better than anyone, but I didn't know a whole second version of his life existed right under my nose. But something interesting happened last week. I ran into an old friend, Nate, at a coffee shop downtown. We went to college together and hadn't seen each other in years. We talked for almost 2 hours, catching up about everything and nothing. When I got home, I realized it was the first conversation in months where I didn't feel like I was walking on emotional glass. He didn't ask about Mark, didn't pity me, didn't treat me like someone broken. He just treated me like me that night. I slept through the whole night for the first time since everything happened. No dreams, no waking up in the middle of the night thinking I heard his car pull into the driveway. Just quiet, steady sleep. I still haven't gotten rid of that second phone. It's buried in a box in the closet now. I don't open it anymore. But I also can't bring myself to throw it out yet. It feels like the last piece of evidence from a trial that's over but still echoes in my head. Therapy's been helping too. My therapist, Leah, said something that stuck with me. You're grieving the person you thought he was, not the person he turned out to be. That one sentence untangled so much. I'd been trying to make sense of how I could still miss someone who hurt me. It's because I'm not missing him. I'm missing the version I built in my head. The man I believed existed behind the lies. I don't cry as much anymore. Some days are still hard. Like when I find one of his old shirts, or see couples holding hands in public. But there's also relief. Real relief. I don't have to live in the uncertainty anymore. I don't have to wonder why he's late, who he's texting, or if I'm crazy for noticing. The truth finally settled. And even though it shattered me, it also set me free. The other night, I deleted every photo of us from my phone. It took hours, but when I was done, I felt lighter. I kept a few pictures. Ones that include friends or family. Moments that were about more than just him. I want to remember the parts of my life that were good, even if he was standing next to me in them. It's strange. Grief and freedom can exist in the same space. I'm still learning how to live with both, for now. I'm focusing on rebuilding, not the life I had with him, but the one I almost forgot I could have without him. Final update. It's been nearly 6 months since I found that second phone, and if someone had told me back then that I'd ever feel peace again, I wouldn't have believed them. The version of me who sat on the floor with that phone in her hands thought life was over. But now, looking back, I realize it wasn't the end. It was the start of something I didn't even know I needed. Mark and I are officially divorced. The papers came through last week. I thought I'd cry when I saw the final signature, but instead, I just stared at it for a while and then put it in a drawer. It felt more like closing a book than mourning it. A story I already knew the ending to, even before the last chapter was written. The last time I saw him was 2 months ago, at a mediation meeting to finalize property stuff. It was awkward, quiet, polite in a way that made my skin crawl. He looked thinner, older somehow, like guilt had been living under his skin. He tried to make small talk, asked how Bailey was. How work was going, I answered politely, but nothing more. When we were leaving, he said, "I really did love you." "You know," I said, "maybe, but love isn't supposed to feel like that." And then I walked away. I haven't seen him since. The second phone is gone. I finally threw it out about a month ago. It took me longer than I care to admit. But one morning I just woke up and knew it was time. I didn't look through it again. Didn't reread the messages or photos. I just put it in a bag, took it to an electronics recycling place, and handed it over. When the guy behind the counter asked if I wanted the SIM card back, I said no. It felt symbolic, like handing over the last little piece of poison I'd been holding on to. My therapist called it a grief ritual. I call it getting my life back. After that, things started to shift. I didn't notice it all at once, but I started doing things just for me. I cut my hair shorter. I joined a local painting class at the community center. I went on a solo trip to Maine because I'd always wanted to see the ocean in the fall. I sat on rocky cliffs with coffee and watched the sunrise. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to join me. It was just me, and that was enough. There were moments of sadness, of course, there still are. Sometimes it hits me in the smallest ways. Like when I catch myself cooking too much food, or reaching for my phone to share something funny before remembering there's no one to send it to. But even those moments feel softer now, less like wounds and more like old scars. People always talk about closure like it's this big dramatic moment, but for me, it came quietly. One afternoon I was walking Bailey, and I saw a couple sitting on a park bench laughing. The woman leaned her head on the man's shoulder, and instead of feeling envy or sadness, I just smiled and kept walking. That was it. That was closure. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Nate, the old friend I ran into at the coffee shop, asked if I wanted to go hiking with him and a few friends. I said yes. It wasn't a date, just a day out. But it turned into dinner, and then another outing, and slowly, something started to grow. He knows what happened. I told him early on because I didn't want to build anything on half-truths again. He didn't pity me, he just listened, and when I finished, he said, "You deserved better." Simple as that. No overcomplicated sympathy, no promises, just truth. We're not rushing anything, I'm not even sure what to call it yet. But it feels good, it feels steady. I'm learning to trust that again, little by little. I still talk to Leah, my therapist, and she keeps reminding me that healing isn't linear. There are still nights where I replay things in my head, where I wonder if I could have seen the signs earlier or done something differently. But then I remind myself that none of this was my fault. I didn't fail at marriage, he did when he lied. My only mistake was believing his lies because I loved him. My mom visited last weekend, and while we were having coffee, she said, "You look lighter." And I realized she was right. I don't wake up with that anxious pit in my stomach anymore. I don't feel like I'm walking around half asleep. I'm present, I'm alive. The other day, I found an old notebook from when Mark and I were newly married. Inside were little notes we used to leave each other. "Love you. Don't forget milk. You make Mondays better." For a second, it made my chest ache. But then I smiled. Because those notes weren't lies when they were written. They were real for that moment in time. And I can still honor that without wanting it back. I think that's what healing really is. Making peace with the truth instead of rewriting it. I still have the same house, the same job, the same dog, but everything feels different. The air feels lighter. I laugh more. I trust myself again, and maybe most importantly, I finally stopped waiting for an apology that wouldn't fix anything anyway. Mark was a chapter of my life, not the whole book, and right now, I'm finally starting to write new pages, ones where I'm the main character, not the supporting one in someone else's story. Stories number 7, Son told me I'm his best friend. It happened on a Thursday night, one of those ordinary evenings that you don't expect to remember. Dinner had been spaghetti, the kind that comes from a jar because I was too tired to cook something from scratch after work. My son, Noah, had spent most of the day glued to his Legos and cartoons while I bounced between meetings on my laptop. By the time I finally shut it down, the sky was turning orange outside the kitchen window, and the house smelled faintly of garlic and dish soap. Noah was sitting on the couch with a blanket around his shoulders, watching some superhero show. When I sat beside him, he leaned against me without saying anything. After a few minutes, he looked up and said, so simply it almost didn't register at first, "Mom, you're my best friend." I laughed. One of those nervous, surprised laughs that come out when your heart gets hit by something you weren't ready for. I said, "Really? Not Liam from school?" He shook his head so hard his curls bounced. "No, Liam's mean sometimes. You always listen. I don't know why. But that one line, 'You always listen,' just broke me a little. Because the truth was, I didn't always feel like I listened enough. Between work, bills, laundry, cooking, and trying to stay afloat as a single mom, I'd spent years convincing myself that showing up was enough. I tried to give Noah stability after the mess of the divorce. But I often worried he'd grow up remembering me as too busy, too tired, too distracted. His words hit me like a small miracle I didn't deserve. Noah's dad, Mark, and I split when Noah was 4. We married young, and honestly, we were just kids ourselves by the time we hit 30. Everything that made us work in the beginning, spontaneity, adventure, big dreams, had turned into things we resented. He thought I'd become too serious. I thought he was too careless when he moved out. Noah didn't really understand. He just asked if Daddy was going to his new house forever. I told him no, that Daddy would still see him all the time. And Mark did try in the beginning. He'd take Noah every other weekend, sometimes call midweek. But as time went on, the calls came less, and the visits became more like errands than father-son time. It wasn't that Mark didn't love Noah, he did. In his way. But responsibility never sat well with him. He was always chasing something. A new job, a new city, a new girlfriend. Meanwhile, I was here, doing the day-to-day work of being the stable one. And I guess that's what made that one sentence. You're my best friend. So heavy and beautiful all at once. It made me feel proud, but also a little guilty. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to rely on his mom to fill that role. He should have friends his own age to laugh with, to run with, to scrape knees with. After Noah went to bed that night, I stood in the doorway and watched him sleep. His blanket was tangled, his little arm hanging off the side of the bed. I felt this overwhelming mix of love and fear. Love because he was my whole world, and fear because I didn't want to be too much of it. I started making small changes after that night. I cut back on taking work calls after 6 p.m. I signed Noah up for soccer, even though it meant sacrificing some weekends. I started saying yes more when he asked to play instead of, maybe later. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. The next few months were a blur of small, ordinary moments that somehow felt extraordinary now that I was paying attention. The smell of sunscreen at soccer practice. The sound of him laughing at a bad joke I told in the car. The way he'd sneak into my bed some nights after a nightmare, whispering, "Can I stay here just for a little?" I said yes every time. Then summer rolled around, and Mark called out of the blue to say he wanted to take Noah for a week. I hesitated, but I said yes. I thought it would be good for them to reconnect. The day Mark came to pick him up, Noah clung to me at the door. He didn't cry. He just looked up at me and said quietly, "Can you come too?" That one broke me. I knelt down and told him he'd have fun, that Daddy missed him, and that I'd be right here when he came back. He nodded, trying to be brave, and I held it together until the car pulled away. The first 2 days were strange. The house was too quiet. I didn't realize how much of my life revolved around that little voice constantly calling, "Mom?" Mark sent a few pictures. Noah at a park, Noah eating ice cream. But on the 4th night, I got a call. Mark said Noah was homesick and wanted to come home early. I told him to bring him back whenever. But Mark just sighed and said, "I'll try to talk to him. Maybe he'll settle down." He didn't. At 9 p.m., my doorbell rang, and there was Noah, clutching his little backpack, looking exhausted. Mark said he tried to make it work. But Noah just wanted to come home. After Mark left, I made Noah some mac and cheese and sat beside him while he ate quietly. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "I love Daddy, but he doesn't talk to me like you do." It wasn't said with anger or judgment, just a small, sad kind of honesty that only a child can have. I told him, "Your dad loves you in his own way. Some people just show it differently." He nodded, thought for a second, then said again, "You're my best friend." This time, I didn't laugh, I just hugged him and said, "You're mine too." That was about a year ago. Since then, Mark's visits have stayed inconsistent. Sometimes he calls, sometimes months go by without hearing from him. I used to get angry about it. Angry for Noah. Angry for myself, but lately, I've realized something. I can't control who shows up. I can only control how I show up. And I do, every day. Now Noah's 7. He's got more friends now. Real ones. Kids he plays tag with at school. Neighbors who come over after dinner to ride bikes. But every night before bed, he still wants to talk. Sometimes about his day. Sometimes about a dream he had. Sometimes just about random facts he picked up last week. He told me he didn't think he'd ever get married because that's too much work. I laughed and said, "You sound like someone who's been married before." He grinned and said, "Well, I learned from you. It's funny." He meant it as a joke, but it hit me deep because he is learning from me. Every time I show patience instead of frustration. Every time I listen instead of rush him. Every time I admit when I'm wrong, he's watching. I've stopped trying to be the perfect parent. Now I just try to be an honest one. The kind who apologizes when she snaps. The kind who sits down to play even when there's laundry piling up. The kind who makes time to listen. Really listen, and the truth is, being Noah's best friend isn't about being cool or saying yes to everything. It's about being his safe place. The person he knows will love him. Even on the days he messes up, he'll outgrow it one day. He'll get older, busier, maybe embarrassed to tell me things. That's normal. But for now I'm soaking in every moment. The little hands in mine, the drawings taped to the fridge, the sleepy "love you, Mom" before bed, because one day he won't say it as often. One day, he'll have other best friends, but if I've done my job right, he'll still know that when the world feels too loud or too heavy, he always has one person he can come back to, his mom, who'll still be sitting there, ready to listen. And honestly, that's all I've ever wanted. Update. It's been about 8 months since I wrote that first post, and I didn't expect so many people to care about something that felt so simple. A kid calling his mom his best friend. But reading everyone's kind messages made me realize how many parents, especially single ones, go through that same tug-of-war between being enough and worrying that they're too much of everything. Noah just turned 8 last week. 8? That feels impossible to say out loud, because I can still remember when he used to crawl into my bed every night with his stuffed dinosaur, whispering, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll protect you." Now he's starting to sound older, taller, and somehow wiser, even though he still insists mac and cheese is a fancy meal. So, here's how things have been. After that moment where he told me again I was his best friend, something in me shifted permanently. I started really structuring my life around being present, not just available. I switched departments at work, same company, but I moved from a client-facing role to an internal position that lets me work 9 to 5 instead of unpredictable hours. That meant a pay cut, but I can't even explain how worth it's been. I get to pick Noah up from school almost every day now. When I show up, he still runs toward me with his backpack bouncing and that goofy grin, yelling, "Mom," like he hasn't seen me in years. That little moment, the sprint across the schoolyard, feels like therapy. One afternoon a few weeks ago, his teacher, Mrs. Lawson, pulled me aside during pickup. She smiled and said, "Noah talks about you a lot. He told the class his mom is his best friend, but also said, 'She still makes me do chores, though.'" We both laughed, but it made my heart ache in that warm, proud kind of way. I asked if he was doing okay socially, and she told me he's actually been helping a new kid adjust. Apparently, a boy named Carter joined the class mid-year and was shy, and Noah took him under his wing. That hit me hard because a year ago, Noah was that shy kid, the one who clung to my leg and wouldn't talk to anyone at recess. Now he's the helper. Later that night, I asked him about Carter, and he shrugged and said he didn't have anyone to play with. So I said we could be friends. That's what you do, right? I think I actually teared up in front of him. I told him I was proud, and he said, "Yeah, I know," in that matter-of-fact kid way that sounds cocky but is really just confidence in disguise. Mark, on the other hand, has been a more complicated part of this journey. We've had more conversations lately. Not just about logistics, but about Noah. I think he finally realized he was missing out on something that doesn't wait for you to get your act together. Childhood back in April, he called and asked if I'd be okay with him coming to Noah's soccer game. It was the first time he'd brought it up himself. I said yes, of course. The morning of the game, Noah was practically vibrating with excitement. He kept saying, "Do you think Daddy will really come?" And I told him, "I think he will," and he did. Mark showed up halfway through the first half, standing off to the side, hands in his pockets like he didn't know what to do with himself. When Noah spotted him, he waved so big he nearly tripped. After the game, Mark took us both for ice cream. It wasn't awkward like I feared it would be. Just quiet, gentle. He asked Noah questions, really listened to him. And for the first time in a long time, I saw my ex not as the man who disappointed me, but as a dad trying to figure it out again. That night, when Noah was brushing his teeth, he looked at me in the mirror and said, "I think Daddy's trying to be my friend again." I told him, "I think you're right." I didn't realize how much I'd been holding on to bitterness until that moment. Watching Noah forgive so naturally reminded me that forgiveness doesn't have to mean forgetting. It just means not carrying the anger anymore. Since then, Mark's been more consistent. He calls Noah twice a week, sometimes comes over to watch him play outside or helps with homework. He even asked if he could take him to his favorite arcade last weekend. It's still a work in progress, but it feels like progress, and that's enough. Something else unexpected happened a few months ago. I started dating someone. His name is Derek. He's kind, patient, and doesn't flinch at the fact that Noah will always come first. We met at a local bookstore, which feels ridiculously cliché, but I swear it's true. He overheard me muttering about not finding a book I wanted, helped me look for it, and we ended up talking for 2 hours in the aisle. At first I didn't tell Noah. I didn't want to confuse him or rush anything. But once Derek and I started getting serious, I introduced them slowly. First over ice cream, then a movie night at home. Noah was cautious at first, polite but distant. He's protective of me in this small but very real way. A few weeks in, Derek showed up to one of Noah's soccer games. And afterward Noah told me, "He's okay." He cheers loud. That's Noah's version of a stamp of approval. It's strange. The life I'm living now is so different from what I imagined when I first became a mom. I thought I'd have a partner beside me through every bedtime story and every scraped knee. Instead, I've had to learn to stand on my own. But because of that, Noah's seen what resilience looks like up close. A few nights ago, when I was tucking him in, he said, "Mom, when I'm a dad, I'm gonna be like you." "I'll listen to my kid a lot." I froze. Then I kissed his forehead and told him that made me the happiest person in the world. Later, after he fell asleep, I just sat there beside his bed for a while, watching his little chest rise and fall, thinking about how much he's grown, how much we've grown together. We're still best friends, but now it feels different. It's not because he doesn't have anyone else. It's because he chooses me. And I think that's what love between a parent and child evolves into. Not dependency, but trust. He trusts me to be there, to listen, to make mistakes and own them, to laugh, to comfort, to stay. I don't know what the next few years will look like. I'm sure we'll hit that stage where he rolls his eyes at everything I say and insists I don't get it. But I'm not scared of it anymore, because this foundation we've built, brick by tiny brick, will still be there. Every time he says, "You're my best friend," I don't just hear love. I hear all the late nights, all the sacrifices, all the moments I thought I was failing but somehow wasn't. And that's the kind of reminder that keeps me going. Final update. It's been almost 2 years since I first wrote about Noah calling me his best friend, and I can't believe how much life has changed since then. I thought I'd come back and close this chapter because it's no longer just a story about a mom and her son. It's become something bigger, something that's shaped both of us in ways I didn't expect. Noah just turned 9 a few weeks ago. We had a small birthday party in our backyard. Nothing fancy, just a barbecue, a rented bounce house, and a bunch of sticky-faced kids running around until sunset. He's at that age where he's teetering between little kid and almost preteen. One minute he's climbing trees, and the next he's saying things like, "I think I'm too old for cartoons," though 5 minutes later, he's giggling at SpongeBob again. He still calls me his best friend sometimes, though not as often now, and that's okay. That's actually perfect, because now he says things like, "Mom, you're my favorite person," or "You always make me feel better." And I know what he means. Our relationship has evolved from that deep cling of early childhood to something more balanced. He's gaining independence, but we've kept the closeness. There was a moment recently that really hit me. It happened on a random Tuesday after school. Noah came home quieter than usual. I could tell something was off right away. He tends to go silent when he's processing feelings. When I asked, he said, "I think my friends don't like me anymore." My heart sank, but I just listened. He told me that a few boys at school started teasing him because he doesn't play video games as much as they do. He said, "They said I'm weird because I still talk to my mom a lot." That one hurt. I tried not to show it, but it stung deep down in a place only moms understand. I asked him, "Do you think it's weird to talk to me?" He thought for a second and said, "No, you're just easy to talk to, but maybe I shouldn't tell people that." And I said, "You can tell whoever you want. Having someone who listens doesn't make you weird. It makes you lucky." He nodded and went back to eating his snack. But I could tell he was thinking about it. Later that night, when I tucked him in, he hugged me tighter than usual and said, "Even if they think it's weird, you're still my best friend. I don't care." It was one of those moments that reminded me that being close to your kid isn't about keeping them little. It's about being the place they come back to. No matter how big they get, things with Mark have settled into a rhythm too. He's not perfect, he never will be, but he's more present now than he's ever been. He calls regularly, comes to games, and actually remembers school events without me reminding him. He even told me once, "You were right about needing to just show up." I don't think he meant it as an apology, but in a way it was, and honestly, that's enough. Mark and I co-parent now like adults who finally understand that our relationship doesn't have to be romantic to be functional. We've even managed to sit together at Noah's games without that weird tension. Noah notices too. He'll say things like, "You and Dad are better at talking now." And I tell him, "Yeah, we're learning." And then there's Derek. He's still in the picture, steady, patient. The kind of man who doesn't try to take over but quietly builds trust one gesture at a time. Noah warmed up to him completely this past year, the other day. I caught them working together on a school science project. Noah was explaining gravity, while Derek was pretending to be completely mind-blown. Afterward, Noah told me, "Derek's kinda like a big friend. Not like a dad, but like someone who helps." I smiled because that's exactly what Derek's been. Someone who helps. not replaces. Life is slower now, not easier but steadier. I've learned that peace doesn't come from everything being perfect. It comes from accepting imperfection and still finding joy anyway. Some nights, when the house is quiet and Noah's asleep, I'll walk past his room and just watch him breathe. He's longer now, takes up more space in bed, has dreams I can't always decode anymore, but I can still see traces of the little boy who used to hold my hand everywhere we went. There's this photo on my fridge that I look at all the time. It's from when he was about 5. He's wearing this oversized superhero cape, and his face is smudged with chocolate. The caption underneath, in my own handwriting, says, "You're my best friend, Mom." Every time I see it, I think about how far we've come from that night on the couch with the jarred spaghetti sauce smell, and his little voice breaking through the noise of my exhaustion. I had no idea that moment would be the start of everything changing. Not just for him, but for me. Because what I've realized is that Noah didn't just call me his best friend that night. He unknowingly handed me a mirror. He showed me who I wanted to be. The kind of mother I could become if I really leaned in. And I did. He taught me patience, empathy, forgiveness, not through words, but through the quiet, honest love that only a child can give. Now, as he steps into this next stage of life, I can already feel the distance starting to stretch a little. He's making more of his own plans, spending more time with friends, and that's exactly what he should be doing. But every time he reaches for my hand in a parking lot, or leans his head on my shoulder during a movie, I remind myself that I still have him, just in a different way. Last weekend, we were driving home from soccer practice, and I asked him, "Who's your best friend now?" He grinned and said, "Probably Carter. But you're still my favorite person." And that was it. The perfect answer. Because that's how it's supposed to go. They grow, they stretch, they build their own worlds. But they never stop needing the love that started it all. So, to all the parents out there reading this, if your kid still calls you their best friend, don't worry about whether it's too much. Just cherish it. Because someday, when they've outgrown the title, they'll still carry the bond you built through all those bedtime talks, school pickups and spaghetti dinners, and that bond, it never fades. As for me and Noah, we're still navigating, still learning, still laughing at the same dumb jokes. And even when he's older and maybe doesn't say it anymore, I'll still know. Because once your kid calls you their best friend, a part of your heart never forgets it. Stories number 8. I told my stepkids I don't see them as my kids anymore. I never thought I'd write something like this, but I guess I need a place to say it all out loud. Because for the past few weeks, I've been sitting with this awful pit in my stomach, wondering if I'm the monster my stepkids now believe I am. I, 42F, married my husband, Tom, 47M, 12 years ago. At the time, he was a single father to 2 kids, Jake, who was 8, and Ellie, who was 6. Their mom, Lisa, was still in the picture, but she'd moved to another state with her new husband. So the kids lived with us full-time during the school year and spent holidays with her. When Tom and I first met, I was nervous about stepping into the mom role. I didn't have kids of my own, but I always wanted them. The first year was rough. Jake didn't talk to me much, and Ellie would glare at me from behind her juice box. But slowly, things softened. I showed up for everything. Soccer games, parent-teacher conferences, late-night fevers, everything. I never wanted to replace Lisa, just to be another adult who loved them. And for a long time, I thought that's what we had. When they got older, the dynamic shifted. Lisa started calling more often, and I could tell the kids were torn between 2 worlds. She would promise things she rarely delivered. Vacations, phones, big presents, and when those things didn't happen, I'd be the one comforting them. I never said a bad word about her, even though part of me wanted to scream. Tom always said, "You're the glue, Jen. You keep this family together." And I believed him. Then came high school. Jake started pulling away first. Typical teenage stuff. Shutting his door, hanging with friends, rolling his eyes when I asked about his day. But Ellie was different. She turned cold. She'd say things like, "You're not my real mom," when she was mad. Or, "My mom wouldn't make me do that." I told myself she'd grow out of it, but she didn't. A few years ago, Lisa was diagnosed with breast cancer. The kids were devastated, and of course I understood. I helped them pack for trips to see her, rearranged my work schedule so they could spend time with her. I even sent Lisa care packages, not because I liked her, I didn't, but because it felt like the right thing to do. Lisa passed away last fall. I was the one who answered the phone when her husband called. I remember standing in the kitchen, staring at the sink, hearing him say, "She's gone," and just whispering, "Okay." That night I told Tom, and he sat on the floor and cried. Jake and Ellie were both in college by then. Jake in Oregon, Ellie in Texas. But they came home for the funeral. I tried to be supportive. I really did. But from the moment they arrived, it was like I was invisible. Ellie wouldn't even look at me. Jake barely said hello at the service. When people offered condolences, they stood beside Tom, not me. I told myself it wasn't about me, that grief makes people act strange. But deep down, it hurt. After the funeral, they stayed for a week. And that week broke something in me. Ellie snapped at me constantly. If I made dinner, she'd say, "Mom used to make it better." If I offered to help with laundry, she'd mutter, "You don't have to pretend anymore." One night she said, "You don't have to act like our mom now that she's gone." I didn't even respond. I just went to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried. Tom tried to mediate. "But he's always been conflict avoidant," he said. "They're grieving, Jen. Let's just give them space." So I did. Then last month, something happened that I can't seem to move past. Jake got engaged. He announced it in a group text with me. Tom and Ellie, I was thrilled. Genuinely happy for him. I sent a long message congratulating him, telling him I couldn't wait to meet his fiancée, and asked if they needed help with planning. He never replied. 2 days later, Tom got a call from Jake. Turns out, Jake and Ellie are planning the wedding together. And Jake told Tom that they don't want me there. He said, "We love Jen, but it doesn't feel right having her there. It's more for family." I was sitting right next to Tom when he said it. I'll never forget the way Tom looked at me. Like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. After he hung up, I just said, "I get it," and I went upstairs. I didn't sleep for days. 12 years of birthday parties. Scraped knees, late-night talks, college visits, all gone. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? Finally, last week, Ellie came home to visit for a few days. I'd been dreading it, but I knew we needed to talk. One night after dinner, I asked her to sit down. I told her calmly, "Ellie, I need to say something, and I need you to actually listen." She rolled her eyes but sat down. I said, "I love you. I always have. But after everything that's happened, the way you've treated me, the way you've shut me out, I can't keep pretending this is a two-way relationship. I don't expect you to see me as your mom anymore, but I also can't keep seeing you as my daughter if I'm just a placeholder to you." She looked stunned. Then angry, she said, "So you're giving up on us?" I said, "No, I'm letting go of something that doesn't exist anymore." She got up and said, "Wow, you're unbelievable." Then she grabbed her keys and left. The next day, Tom told me that Jake and Ellie are both furious, that I crossed a line. He said I shouldn't have said it, that it sounded final, and maybe it was, because the truth is, I can't keep loving people who refuse to see me as anything but a stand-in for the mother they lost. I'm not their mom, I know that, but for over a decade, I tried my hardest to be family now. I just feel like a ghost in my own home. Tom and I are distant. He says he understands my pain, but I can tell he blames me a little. Sometimes he looks at me like I've broken something sacred. Last night I told him I didn't say it to hurt them. I said it because I can't keep hurting myself. He didn't respond. So here I am, in our quiet house, surrounded by photos I'm not sure I should keep. Part of me wants to pack them away, to finally close that chapter. Another part of me wants to hold on, because despite everything, I did love those kids like my own. But maybe that's the hardest part. Realizing that love doesn't always get returned. No matter how pure your intentions were, sometimes it just runs out of places to go. It's been 5 months since I told Jake and Ellie that I no longer saw them as my kids. I didn't plan to post an update, but so much has happened since then that keeping it bottled up feels impossible. I've replayed that night 100 times in my head, wondering if I should have bitten my tongue, worded things differently, softened the blow. But every time I go through it, I end up in the same place, no matter how I said it. The truth was always going to hurt. At first, the silence was deafening. Ellie didn't come home for Easter, and Jake hasn't called once. They've completely cut me off. I still see their posts sometimes. Ellie posting graduation photos, Jake and his fiancée posing with Tom at a family brunch I didn't even know about. And every time I see one, I feel this mix of sadness and anger that's hard to describe. It's like mourning people who are still alive. Tom and I have been walking on eggshells. For the first month or two, we avoided talking about it. He'd mention Jake or Ellie in passing, and I'd just nod. But then one night, it all came to a head. He came home from work looking tense. We ate dinner in silence, and halfway through, he put his fork down and said, "Ellie called me today. She's moving back to town after graduation," I said. "That's nice." He looked at me for a long time and said, She wants to stay here for a while until she finds an apartment. I didn't even think before I said it. I can't live with her, Tom. Not after everything. His face fell. She's my daughter, Jen. I know, I said. But she made it clear I'm not family to her anymore. I can't play house like nothing happened. That turned into the biggest fight we've had in our marriage. He accused me of pushing his kids away, of making things harder when they're already grieving. I told him I spent 12 years trying to earn their love, and that I'm done begging for it. He said, they lost their mother, and I snapped, and I lost them. He didn't have a comeback for that. The next few weeks were awful. We barely spoke. I started staying late at work just to avoid being home. I even looked at apartment listings one night, just to see what was out there. Then out of nowhere, Jake texted me. It was short. Just, hey, can we talk? My heart dropped. I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying. Sure, he called later that night. His voice was quiet, hesitant. He said, I know things got ugly. I just wanted you to know I don't hate you. I nearly cried right there. He said he was sorry for excluding me from the wedding, but that it still felt too weird for me to come. I told him I understood, even though it felt like swallowing glass. Then he said something that I still think about. You were the one who was there. I know that. I just didn't know how to let myself love you without feeling like I was betraying Mom. It broke my heart in a way I can't even explain, because suddenly everything made sense. The resentment, the distance, the anger. It wasn't really about me. It was about guilt, I told him. You don't have to choose. Loving her doesn't erase me, and loving me doesn't erase her. He started crying then, quietly, like he didn't want me to hear. He said, I wish you told me that years ago. After that call, I just sat on the kitchen floor, phone still in my hand, and sobbed until Mark found me. When I told him about the conversation, he looked relieved. Maybe it's a start, he said. Jake didn't suddenly turn everything around, but he started texting me sometimes. Updates about work, photos of his dog, random memes, small steps. I'll take them. Ellie, on the other hand, is another story. She came home a few weeks ago, and even though she stayed with Tom's sister, she dropped by one evening while he was at work. I could tell she'd been crying. She stood in the doorway, fidgeting. Dad told me you're still mad, she said. I'm not mad, I said. I'm just tired. She looked down and whispered, I didn't mean to hurt you, I told her. I know. But you did. She nodded. Then she said something I'll never forget. You were always there. I just didn't want to admit it, because it felt like betraying Mom. Almost word for word what Jake had said. I asked her, do you still feel that way? She hesitated. I don't know. I think part of me just misses her so much that I needed someone to blame. That was the first time she really looked at me. Not like an enemy, but like a person. We talked for a long time, about her mom, about college, about the way grief messes with your sense of loyalty. I told her I never wanted to take her mother's place. I just wanted to love her. However she'd let me, when she left that night, she hugged me for the first time in years. It wasn't long or dramatic, but it was real. Tom cried when I told him. He said, I was so scared this would destroy our family. And for the first time in months, I actually believed him when he said, we'll be okay. Things still aren't perfect. Jake's wedding is next month, and I'm still not invited. But I'm genuinely at peace with that now. He called me last week to say thank you for understanding. I told him I just wanted him to be happy. Ellie and I text every so often. It's cautious, but it's something. She even sent me a picture of her new apartment and said, you'd like it. It has one of those huge kitchen windows like you love. That small line, like you love, meant the world to me. Tom and I have been going to couples therapy. I won't lie. It's been hard. There are still moments when I feel resentful that he didn't stand up for me more. But I'm learning that we both made mistakes. I held my pain in until it exploded, and he avoided conflict until it was too late. Our therapist said something last week that stuck with me. Sometimes family isn't about who sees you as a parent. It's about who you can forgive enough to love again. I'm trying to live by that. We're planning to take a small trip this summer. Just the two of us. No heavy talks, no tension, just breathing again. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that love isn't about possession or labels. I may not be mom to Jake and Ellie anymore, but I'm still someone who helped raise them, who loved them through chaos, who showed up even when it wasn't reciprocated, and maybe that's enough. Because I've realized I don't need to be called mom to know I mattered. I was there, I tried, and I loved them, even when they couldn't love me back. And for me, that's finally enough. It's been almost a year since I first wrote about telling my stepkids I no longer viewed them as my kids. I didn't think I'd ever post again, but the way things have unfolded, it feels like the right time to close this chapter properly. Jake's wedding came and went. I wasn't there, but I knew every detail because Tom was. He didn't want to go without me. I'll give him that, but I told him, you need to be there for your son. I'll be okay. He hesitated, then asked quietly, are you sure? I said yes, even though my heart was screaming no. That morning I stayed home. I turned off my phone, made coffee, and sat out on the porch. It was a warm May day, the kind of day that should have felt full of life. But all I felt was this strange numbness. I kept picturing Jake as a little boy in that ridiculous Halloween costume I made him. The one where he tripped because I'd sewn the legs too long. I remembered Ellie's toothless grin the first time she called me Jen instead of that lady. I cried for hours, not because I wasn't at the wedding, but because I realized I wasn't grieving their rejection anymore. I was grieving what could have been. Later that night, when Tom came home, he looked emotionally drained. I didn't ask for details, but he told me the wedding was beautiful. He said Jake's fiancée, Emily, was radiant and that Jake seemed genuinely happy. Then he paused and said, he mentioned you in his speech. My heart stopped. What did he say? Tom's voice was soft. He said, I want to thank my dad for teaching me patience, and I want to thank Jen for teaching me how to love without expecting anything in return. I just stared at him. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I could even speak. Tom said Jake looked directly at him when he said it, like he wanted him to make sure I heard those words. That single sentence, 12 years of love, heartbreak, anger, and forgiveness, finally felt like it meant something. A week later, I got a package in the mail. Inside was a handwritten card and a small framed photo of Jake and Emily on their wedding day. The note read, I know you couldn't be there, but I wanted you to see this. Thank you for being part of the reason I grew up into the man I am, love. Jake. I didn't realize how much I needed that closure until I held that frame in my hands. Ellie came by not long after. She'd heard from Jake that I got the package and wanted to see how I was doing. She's been living back in town for a few months now, and little by little we've been finding our rhythm again. We sat on the couch drinking tea, and out of nowhere she said, I told Jake you were right. I laughed a little. About what? She shrugged. That love doesn't have to look like it used to. I kept waiting for it to feel the same as before Mom died, but it never will, and that's okay. She stayed for dinner, helped me clean up, and before she left, she hugged me. A long, full hug this time, she said. I love you, Jen. You might not be my mom, but you'll always be my family. That sentence, you'll always be my family, meant more to me than any mom title ever could. As for Tom and me, we've come a long way. Therapy helped us untangle years of unspoken resentment and miscommunication. He admitted he'd been afraid of losing his kids, afraid of losing me, afraid of facing how divided we'd become. I admitted that sometimes I'd used silence as a weapon, shutting him out instead of letting him in. We started taking evening walks again, the way we used to when we first got married. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we just walk quietly. There's something healing about the simplicity of it. No past. No future, just the sound of our footsteps side by side. A few weeks ago, Ellie invited us both to her new apartment for dinner. She cooked homemade pasta, which was admittedly overcooked, but she was so proud of it that no one cared. Jake and Emily came too, the first time the four of us had been in the same room in years. At first it was awkward. I wasn't sure what to say, but then Jake started telling a story about how I once tried to make banana pancakes and forgot the bananas, and everyone burst out laughing. It broke the tension instantly. At one point, Ellie looked around the table and said, Mom would have liked this. I think we all froze for a second, but then Jake nodded and said, yeah, she would have. And for once, the mention of Lisa didn't sting, it just felt right. Because I finally understood something I hadn't before. I was never meant to replace her. I was meant to help carry what she couldn't. And in some strange, quiet way, maybe that's exactly what I did. When we left that night, Tom slipped his arm around me and said, I think we're going to be okay. And I think he's right. Since then, life has started to feel normal again. A new kind of normal, but still peaceful. I've started volunteering at a local youth center a few times a week, mentoring teens who don't have strong parental figures. It feels like a full circle thing. Pouring my heart into kids who actually need someone to show up. without the baggage of history or resentment. Sometimes Ellie drops by the center to help out. She's majoring in social work now. Watching her laugh with those kids, seeing her eyes light up, it fills me with this quiet pride. The other day, one of the girls at the center asked if I had kids. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Then I smiled and said, kind of. Because that's the truth. I don't have biological kids. My stepkids stopped calling me mom long ago. But I loved them, raised them, taught them, and forgave them. And now, after everything, they've started loving me again. In their own imperfect way. Family doesn't always look how you imagined it. Sometimes it's built from broken pieces that somehow fit together again. Even after you thought they never could. And if that's not motherhood, I don't know what is. Stories number 9. My wife thinks I'm hiding something because I speak Polish with my friend. I never thought something as simple as speaking another language could cause this kind of problem. But here we are. I'm 34, born in Chicago, but both my parents immigrated from Poland in the early 80s. Polish was my first language at home, and even though I mostly use English day to day, I still switch into Polish without thinking sometimes, especially around other Polish speakers. My wife Erin is 32. She's from a small town in Kansas. And she's great, warm, funny, sharp as hell. We've been married for 4 years, together for almost 7. The issue started a couple months ago when I reconnected with an old friend, Adam, who moved back to the US from Warsaw. He and I were close in college, and when I found out he was living just an hour away, I invited him over for dinner. From the minute he walked in, it felt like no time had passed. We slipped into Polish naturally, laughing about old memories and inside jokes. Erin was friendly, but I could tell she felt left out. I tried to translate now and then, but it didn't flow. Adam and I would go back and forth, rapid fire. And I'd stop mid-sentence to explain something, which killed the rhythm. After dinner, Erin smiled politely but was quiet the rest of the night. Later, she told me it made her uncomfortable that we spoke in another language right in front of her. I understood. I told her I wasn't trying to exclude her. It's just how I talk with Adam. I offered to include her more next time or keep it mostly in English. She said it was fine. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Adam and I started hanging out more. Grabbing coffee, watching soccer, stuff like that. Sometimes we'd talk in English, sometimes Polish, depending on the topic. Erin started acting off, short answers, little sighs. Passive-aggressive, must be nice having your secret language comments. At one point, she walked into the kitchen while I was on the phone with Adam. We were talking about his sister's engagement, laughing about his mom trying to plan the wedding from overseas. When I hung up, Erin said, "You don't even sound like yourself when you speak Polish. It's weird. I feel like I don't even know what you're saying." I said, "That's literally what speaking another language is." I tried to laugh it off, but she wasn't joking. She told me it made her anxious, like I was hiding something or talking about her. That stung. I asked if I'd ever given her a reason not to trust me. She said no, but it just didn't feel right, that I had a part of my life she couldn't understand. She even asked if I could just stick to English when she's around. I told her that was unfair. It's not like Polish is some secret code. It's my culture, my family's language. My parents barely speak English, and Erin's met them dozens of times. She knows I translate everything for them when we visit. She's always said she admired how connected I was to my roots. Until now. Apparently the tension's been building. A couple weeks ago, we had people over. Erin's friends, plus Adam and his girlfriend, Kazia. Everyone was drinking, laughing, having a good time. At one point, Adam made a joke in Polish about how my cooking had improved since college, because I once nearly poisoned him with bad chicken. Kazia and I burst out laughing. Erin froze and asked, "What's so funny?" I explained, but she didn't believe me. She said later that night she felt humiliated, that it looked like we were laughing at her. We argued. She said it's disrespectful to speak a language she doesn't understand when she's in the room. I said she's being controlling. She said if I really respected her, I'd stop doing it around her. I told her that's not how this works. I can't cut off a part of who I am just because she's insecure. We didn't talk for 2 days after that. When we finally did, she cried and said she feels like she's married to half a person, that she wants to be part of my world, but can't because of the language barrier. I told her I'd teach her some Polish if she wanted. She said she's too old to learn another language, and that's not the point. It's gotten to where I hesitate to even text Adam because Erin looks over at my phone every time. If she hears me switch languages, she gets quiet or leaves the room. She's convinced I'm hiding something, and no amount of reassurance helps. The thing is, I love Erin. I'm not trying to alienate her. But I can't pretend I don't speak Polish just to make her comfortable. That's not realistic or fair. Last week, she gave me an ultimatum. She said if I can't promise to only speak English around her, she doesn't know if she can keep doing this. I asked her what exactly this is. And she said, feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. That hit me. I get her perspective. I really do. No one wants to feel left out. But it's also exhausting to constantly censor myself. Adam and I talk about our families, sports, work. Never about her. It's not secretive, it's just language, still. I can tell this isn't going away. She's quieter now, distant. I've caught her rolling her eyes if she hears me talking to my mom in Polish. It's like she's building a wall out of resentment, one I can't translate my way through. I keep wondering if there's something deeper going on. Maybe it's not about the language at all. Maybe she feels left behind. Or maybe there's some insecurity I don't fully understand. I've tried to talk about it calmly, but every conversation turns into her accusing me of excluding her, and me trying to defend something that feels like part of my DNA. The irony is, I married Erin because she made me feel seen and accepted in ways no one else did. Now it feels like she only accepts the parts of me that fit neatly into her world. I've never felt lonelier in my own home. Update. It's been a little over a month since I first wrote about the situation with Erin, and I've had more time to sit with everything. Honestly, I wish I could say things magically worked themselves out, but it's been messy, not explosive, not dramatic, just this slow unraveling that's almost worse. After I made that post, I tried to really understand where Erin was coming from instead of just reacting. I thought maybe if I showed her that I wasn't trying to be defensive, she'd let her guard down. So one weekend, I planned a quiet dinner at home and told her I wanted to talk without either of us interrupting the other. She agreed. I explained again that Polish isn't a secret code. It's not about keeping her out of conversations. It's just how I express myself sometimes. I told her that when I'm speaking Polish, it feels natural, like a part of me comes alive that English doesn't fully reach. I said it's not about her at all. She listened, which was a good start. But then she said something that made my heart sink. She said, "It's not what you're saying. It's how you change when you say it. You light up around Adam. You sound happier, more animated. You never talk to me like that anymore." That one hurt because I didn't even know she felt that way. I told her it wasn't because of the language. It was because Adam and I share a history she's not part of. We've known each other since college. We joke about stuff that doesn't need explaining, but she didn't buy it. She said, "So I'll never be able to give you that." It was quiet after that. We didn't fight, we just sat there. Two people who love each other but clearly don't understand how to bridge a growing gap. After that talk, I really did try to meet her halfway. When Adam came over, I told him we'd keep the conversation mostly in English so Erin wouldn't feel excluded. He was understanding, but it was awkward as hell. Every time he slipped into Polish, I'd glance at Erin, and she'd give this small, tight smile. It felt like walking on eggshells in my own house. After Adam left that night, Erin said she appreciated the effort, but she could still feel it. I asked what she meant, and she said she could tell I was holding back. I didn't even know what to say. Of course I was holding back. How could I not be when every word was being silently judged? Things hit a low point 2 weeks ago. My mom called late one evening, upset because my dad's health hasn't been great. We talked in Polish for a while. She doesn't speak much English. When I hung up, Erin came into the room and said, "Were you talking about me again?" I just stared at her. I said, "No. My dad might have to go back to the hospital." She immediately apologized. Said she didn't mean it like that, but the damage was done. It was like every ounce of trust had just evaporated. The next day, I left for a few hours to clear my head and ended up calling my sister. Marta, she's blunt, always has been. I told her everything, and she said, "Erin's insecurity isn't your fault, but you're trying to fix something that's not yours to fix." She told me that being with someone who doesn't respect where I come from will eventually make me resent them. Even if I don't want to admit it, I didn't want to believe her. But part of me knew she was right. Still, I didn't want to give up on my marriage, so I found a couples therapist who specializes in intercultural relationships. Erin agreed to go, though she was hesitant. We've had 3 sessions so far. They're uncomfortable, but productive. The therapist asked Erin what she feels when she hears me speak Polish. She said it's like watching someone I love become someone else for a while. She admitted she feels jealous of the connection I have with people who share my background, of the ease in my voice when I'm not translating everything. I never thought about it that way before. The therapist then asked me how it feels when Erin asks me not to speak Polish. I said it feels like being told to hide part of who I am, like I'm shrinking myself to fit into her comfort zone. That made Erin cry. It was the first time we both really saw how deep this went. It's not about language, it's about belonging. She feels left out of a world I can't erase, and I feel rejected for something I didn't choose. Since then, we've been trying small changes. I started teaching her some basic Polish phrases. Nothing complicated, just greetings, food words, little things. At first she joked about it, but lately she's been practicing. Last week she managed to say, "Jak się masz? How are you?" When my mom called and my mom nearly burst into tears from happiness, Erin smiled like she hadn't in months. It's not perfect. There are still moments of tension. Like last night, when Adam and Kasia invited us over, and Erin said she'd rather not go because she doesn't want to be the only one lost in translation. I went alone. When I got home, she was asleep on the couch, TV still on, a half-empty glass of wine next to her. I sat there for a long time. Just looking at her, she looked peaceful, but also far away. And I realized I didn't want to lose her over something that could maybe be fixed with patience and communication. But I also can't give up this part of me to keep her comfortable. I won't stop being Polish. I can't stop speaking the language that connects me to my family, to who I am, so I don't know where this is going yet. The therapy is helping us talk instead of argue, which is something. She said she's trying to see my side more clearly, and I believe her. But I can tell she still feels that ache of exclusion, even if she's trying to fight it. I guess what I've learned through all this is that love doesn't always mean understanding. It means choosing to try, even when you can't. And right now, that's what we're both doing. Trying. Final update. It's been almost a year since I first wrote about all of this, and I think this is the last time I'll ever post about it. So much has changed that it feels like I'm writing about a completely different version of my life. Erin and I are no longer together. It's strange to type that out because for so long, I was fighting so hard to make us work. But sometimes love just isn't enough when two people want completely different kinds of peace. After my last update, we kept going to therapy for a while. Probably another 3 months. We made real progress at first. She started learning more Polish, and I noticed her trying to make small efforts, like greeting my parents in their language or watching Polish cooking videos on YouTube. It meant a lot to me, more than she probably knew. But there was always this undercurrent we couldn't shake. Every time I'd talk to Adam or my family, even if it was something harmless, she'd tense up. Sometimes she wouldn't say anything, but I could feel it. The way her shoulders stiffened or how she'd suddenly get quiet. One night, I was on a video call with my parents. My dad had just gotten some test results, and things weren't looking great. It was a heavy conversation, all in Polish because that's the only way my parents can fully express themselves. When I hung up, Erin was sitting at the dining table, looking at her laptop but not typing. She said softly, "I wish I could have understood what you were saying," I said. "You could have asked, I would have told you." She shook her head and said, "That's not what I mean. I wish I could just be part of it, without feeling like a guest in your life." That one line pretty much summed up everything. She never stopped feeling like an outsider in a relationship that was supposed to make her feel at home. We went back and forth for weeks after that, talking, fighting, sitting in silence. It got to the point where the house felt like a waiting room. We weren't partners anymore, just two people circling around the same conversation that always ended in hurt. Then one morning, she told me she was going to stay with her sister for a while. She said she needed to clear her head. I helped her pack. She cried. I cried. It wasn't angry. It was just sad. The kind of sadness that comes when you know something is ending but neither of you wants to admit it. She was gone for about 2 weeks before she called and said she didn't think she could come back. She told me she still loved me, but that love wasn't the same anymore. She said she felt like she was constantly trying to belong to a world that would never fully include her. I told her I understood, and I did. We separated quietly. No lawyers right away, no dramatic fights. We split our things like adults. Signed the papers a few months later, and that was that. I still remember watching her drive away for the last time. Bailey, our dog, was sitting by the window, and I just kept staring until the taillights disappeared. The house was painfully quiet after that. The first few weeks, I hated the silence. I'd catch myself thinking, she's going to walk in any minute, but she didn't. And eventually, the silence stopped feeling heavy. It started feeling like space. Adam and Kasia were a big support through it. Adam kept telling me that some people aren't meant to understand every part of us, And that doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different. He was right. Erin isn't a villain in this story. She's a good person who tried her best to love someone whose world looked different from hers. A few months after the divorce was finalized, Erin sent me a message. It wasn't long. She said she'd started taking Spanish classes, just for herself. She said she finally understood that language isn't about exclusion. It's about expression. And that maybe, if she'd realized that sooner, things might have been different between us. I didn't respond right away. When I finally did, I told her I was proud of her. Because life feels different now, but not in a bad way. I've been seeing someone new. Her name's Lauren. She's half Italian. Grew up speaking English and a bit of her dad's dialect, funny enough. One of the first things she asked me when we started dating was if I could teach her some Polish words. The first phrase I taught her was spokój ducha. It means peace of mind. I still talk to Adam often. We actually started helping organize small community events for Polish families in the area. It's been good. Fulfilling in a way that reminds me who I am without having to shrink or explain it. Sometimes I'll think about Erin and wonder how she's doing. I don't feel anger anymore. Just this quiet respect for the time we shared. We both gave it everything we could. It just wasn't meant to last forever. Looking back, I think the hardest part wasn't losing her. It was realizing that you can love someone deeply and still not be able to give them what they need. And that's okay. I've learned that love isn't about blending into one another until there's no space left. It's about standing side by side, different but still connected. Erin and I couldn't find that balance. But I hope we both do someday. As for me, I'm still speaking Polish, still talking to my parents every day, still laughing with Adam, still teaching Lauren little phrases that make her smile. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I don't have to choose between the parts of myself I'm whole. Stories number 10. My husband expected me to fund his kids' savings accounts when I married Brandon 2 years ago. I thought I was walking into a partnership, someone who matched my values, my goals, and my vision for the future. We'd both been through failed relationships before, so we agreed early on that communication and fairness were non-negotiable. I meant it. I think he did too. At least until money got involved. I'm 35, no kids of my own. Brandon is 40 and has 2 children from his previous marriage. Ella, 13, and Mason, 10. His ex, Trisha, has them about 60% of the time. They're great kids, sweet, polite, and surprisingly easy to be around. I've never had an issue with them personally. I genuinely care about them. But from the very beginning, I made it clear that while I would always support them emotionally and be involved, I wasn't looking to replace their mom or to become their financial provider. Brandon said he understood that completely. He even told me, "You don't have to take on any of that. I've got it covered." That was before he lost his job last year. It wasn't his fault. His company downsized, and he got caught in the layoffs. I supported him emotionally and financially for a while. My job in marketing was stable, and I was making enough to cover the essentials. Mortgage, groceries, utilities, even his car payment a couple of times. He's working again now, thankfully. But things have been tighter ever since. A few weeks ago, we were having dinner when Brandon said, "Hey, I wanted to talk about something. It's about the kids' future savings accounts." I put my fork down. "Okay, what about them?" He explained that he and Trisha had set up savings accounts for both kids years ago. Sort of a college or whatever they choose later fund. Trisha had been contributing $200 a month to each account, while Brandon had matched it when he was employed. Since the layoff, he hadn't been able to contribute. And Trisha recently mentioned she was getting frustrated. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I was thinking maybe we could start contributing together, like $200 total each month, just to get it back on track." At first, I thought he meant he and Trisha, but then he clarified. "I mean, you and me, from our joint account." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. I said, "Wait, you're asking me to put my money into savings accounts for your kids? Accounts that are in your and your ex-wife's names?" He nodded like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I told him, "Brandon, I love your kids, but that's not my responsibility. They already have 2 parents for that." He looked disappointed and said, "Yeah, but you're part of this family too now. I thought you'd want to invest in their future." I told him I am investing in their future. By helping take care of them when they're here. Cooking meals, buying extra groceries, paying for outings, but building their savings funds? That crosses a line. He got quiet, then muttered, "You make more than me. I just thought you'd understand." That one hit a nerve. I said, "Brandon, I make more because I worked my ass off, not so I could subsidize your past obligations." He accused me of being cold, of seeing them as his problem instead of ours. I told him that's not true, that I do care. But financial boundaries are important. I don't even have a savings fund for myself as big as what he's proposing to build for them. Later that week, Trisha texted me out of nowhere. She said, "Brandon mentioned you don't want to help with the kids' accounts. I just hope you know it's about them, not us." That made me furious. I never discussed this with her, and the fact that he told her at all felt like a betrayal. I replied simply, "That's between you and Brandon." When he got home, I confronted him. He said, "I didn't mean to make it a big deal. She just asked if we were going to start contributing again." I said, "Then why tell her about my opinion? That's private." He looked embarrassed, but still stood by his stance. "We're a blended family now, we should act like one." Here's where I might sound selfish, but I'm just being honest. I didn't marry Brandon to take on his financial history. I married him to build something new together. I help pay for the house, the bills, the groceries, and the kids when they're here. I'm not stingy, but I also believe that just because a man has children doesn't mean his new partner automatically becomes a co-parent financially. What's worse is how awkward things have become since then. Ella overheard something, I think from her mom, and asked me, "Do you not like helping us?" I froze. I told her, "Of course I like helping you, sweetheart. I just think some things are for your parents to handle." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't totally understand. Brandon has been distant since that conversation. He still does his share around the house, but I can feel the resentment simmering. It's subtle. Little comments about how I don't see the big picture, or how I think too much in terms of what's mine versus ours. The irony is, I thought we had a healthy dynamic. We split bills fairly, take turns with chores, and communicate well, until this. Now it feels like there's a wedge between us that wasn't there before. I tried to compromise by suggesting that once we build more of our own savings, we could occasionally contribute a gift or one-time amount to the kids' funds, maybe for birthdays or milestones. But he said that wasn't the same, because consistent contributions show commitment. Commitment to what, though? His kids already have two parents who can make those decisions. I'm not trying to play stepmom with a checkbook. Last weekend, I went to brunch with my sister, who told me flat out, "You'd be crazy to do it. If things ever go south, that money's gone, and those accounts aren't even in your name." She's right. There's zero legal or financial protection for me there. I've been thinking a lot about it since then, wondering if this is just one of those marital growing pains, or if it's a sign of something deeper. Like a mismatch in how we view partnership. I love Brandon, I love Ella and Mason, but love doesn't mean erasing boundaries. It doesn't mean I stop protecting myself financially because someone thinks I should. The other night, he tried to revisit the topic again. I told him, "Brandon, I'm not changing my mind. I'll support the kids in every other way I can, but their savings accounts are not my financial obligation. You and Trisha created those. You two should maintain them." He sighed and said quietly, "I just thought we were more of a team than that," I told him. "We are a team, but every team has positions, and I'm not trying to play everyone. Now things are tense. We're not fighting openly, but the silence has its own weight." He's been staying up later, sitting on the couch after I go to bed. I think he feels like I've rejected not just his idea, but his kids, and that breaks my heart, because that's not it at all. I just need him to understand that love and money are not the same thing right now. I'm trying to figure out whether I should give him space or press the issue before it turns into something that festers. I keep hoping he'll realize that I'm not being unkind. I'm being realistic, but sometimes I catch myself wondering if realism and love can actually coexist the way I always believed they could. Update. It's been about 6 months since I posted the original story, and honestly, things have shifted more than I expected, though not always in the ways I wanted. After that conversation with Brandon, the tension in the house was palpable. He wasn't angry at me per se, but there was this subtle weight every time we sat down to eat, watched TV, or talked about weekend plans. Even the kids noticed it. At first, I tried to smooth things over by being extra accommodating. I cooked extra dinners, helped Mason with his science project, and attended Ella's school play. I wanted to show that I cared about them without stepping into financial territory I wasn't comfortable with. But over time, I realized that no amount of extra effort could replace the sense of fairness I was holding on to. I couldn't contribute money that wasn't mine without feeling resentful. Then last month, Brandon sat me down again. This time after dinner, He looked tired, frustrated, and, honestly, a little desperate. He said, "I feel like you're not seeing the bigger picture. This isn't just about money. It's about showing the kids that we're a family, that we share responsibilities equally," I tried to explain calmly. "I am showing the kids we're a family every day. I help them with homework, I cook, I take them to soccer practice, but money? That's different. Their accounts are legally yours and Trish's. It's not my obligation to fund them." He shook his head. "It's not about obligation, it's about commitment. It's about showing them that we're all in this together." I sighed. I could see his point, and part of me wanted to just give in to make things smoother. But I couldn't. Not when it felt like compromising my own financial boundaries. I finally said, "Brandon, I love you. I love the kids, but this is where I draw the line. I will support them in every way I can, without putting money into accounts that aren't mine. If that makes you question my commitment, then we need to talk about what being a team really means." He didn't respond right away. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Finally, he said, "I guess I never realized how hard you've had to work to get where you are. I just assumed that since we share a life now, I could rely on you too." That hit me harder than I expected. I told him, "Brandon, I do support this life, and I do my part. But there's a difference between shared life and taking responsibility for your past. You created those accounts. You're the parent. That's your responsibility, not mine." After that conversation, something shifted. It wasn't sudden, but over the next few weeks, Brandon started contributing more consistently himself. I think realizing that he couldn't rely on me forced him to step up in ways he hadn't before. I also noticed him involving the kids more in discussions about saving, budgeting, and planning. He started showing them that responsibility is part of adulthood, and that he didn't need me to fix everything. Interestingly, the kids noticed too. Ella told me one evening, "Mom, I think Dad's trying really hard now." I smiled and said, "Yeah, I think he is." Mason chimed in, "I like it when he talks about our accounts. I feel like I understand more now." Brandon and I have started going to therapy, not because we're failing as a couple, but because we both wanted a neutral space to talk about finances, expectations, and blended family dynamics. It's helped a lot. I think he finally understands that my refusal wasn't about rejecting him or the kids. It was about protecting myself and modeling financial responsibility. We've also started having family meetings, not formal, just a time once a week to sit down and talk about schedules, responsibilities, and upcoming expenses. The kids actually like it. They have a say in what's planned and what they're saving for, which makes it feel like their money, not just a number in a bank account. I've also realized something important about myself. I was scared that saying no would make me appear selfish, or that the kids would resent me. But the truth is, setting boundaries has actually strengthened my relationship with them. They see that I respect myself, and they respect me more for it. Brandon still teases me sometimes about being too practical, but it's affectionate now, not resentful. And the tension that was hanging over the house has eased significantly. We still argue occasionally, but it's about logistics, not values or respect. I feel like we've come a long way in 6 months. I'm proud of the kids for understanding limits, proud of Brandon for stepping up, and proud of myself for holding my ground while still being a loving partner and stepmom. It's not perfect, and it probably never will be. But for the first time, I feel like we're actually building a partnership that works for all of us. Sometimes I still think about what could have happened if I'd just said yes to the accounts. But when I do, I realize we wouldn't have reached this level of understanding or respect. Boundaries aren't walls. They're the framework for a healthier, happier family. And honestly, I've never felt closer to Brandon or the kids than I do right now. Final update: it's been nearly a year since my last update, and I think I finally feel like our blended family has found its footing. Looking back, I realized that the tension around the kids' savings accounts was about more than money. It was about communication, trust, and understanding what it really means to be a family. Brandon and I have settled into a rhythm that works for us. He's become more proactive about his kids' finances. He contributes consistently to Ella's and Mason's accounts, and he's teaching them how to budget and save. I don't touch those accounts, and that boundary is respected. We've agreed that my role is to support the kids emotionally, help with school, meals, and activities, but not take on financial responsibilities that aren't mine. That's been a relief for both of us. Interestingly, setting that boundary actually improved my relationship with the kids. They understand now that I care deeply about them, but I also have limits. I'm still involved in their daily lives, Homework help, weekend outings, attending school events, and just being there to listen. But they've also started seeing their dad take ownership. And that's important. Ella has grown into this incredibly responsible teenager. She asked for advice on opening a checking account in her name, and Brandon and I sat down with her to explain how to manage it. Mason is more laid back, but he started contributing allowance money to a small personal savings account that he manages with guidance from Brandon. They're learning responsibility without me having to finance it. Brandon and I attend therapy sessions together occasionally. At first, I was skeptical, but it's been a game changer. We talk openly about finances, expectations, and parenting roles. It's helped us see each other's perspective, and he's admitted that he initially underestimated the importance of clear boundaries. He's apologized for making me feel pressured, and I've apologized for letting frustration build up before discussing it calmly. Our family dynamics have improved. We now have weekly family meetings, not about money, but about schedules, plans, and even fun stuff like weekend trips or game nights. The kids enjoy having a voice in these discussions, and it's brought a sense of teamwork that was missing before. On a personal note, I've started focusing more on my own financial goals. I'm building my emergency fund and investing for my future, which feels empowering. I no longer feel guilty about saying no to contributing to accounts that aren't mine. Instead, I feel like I'm modeling good financial habits to the kids: boundaries, responsibility, and accountability. Brandon and I have also started planning a small family vacation next summer. For the first time, it feels like our family, not just a collection of obligations. There's laughter, compromise, and shared experiences without the underlying stress about money or resentment. Most importantly, the kids seem happier. They see both of us supporting them in ways that make sense for each of us. There's respect for boundaries, and they've learned that love doesn't have to come with financial strings attached. Looking back, I can see how the initial conflict over the savings accounts was necessary. It forced us to communicate honestly and set expectations, and ultimately it strengthened our relationships. I love Brandon, and I love being part of this family. I'm proud of the environment we've created, one that balances care, responsibility, and respect. I feel at peace now. The stress and tension that dominated our early months of blending our families have faded. We're growing together in a healthy, sustainable way. And I finally understand that being part of a blended family doesn't mean losing yourself or your boundaries. It means building a foundation where everyone can thrive. Stories number 11, my disastrous online exam and the Dorothy heel click. I still can't believe I'm typing this out. If anyone had told me that a simple online university exam could end in near humiliation on a global scale, I would have laughed. But here we are. I'm Jamie, 21F, a senior at a state university in Ohio. I'm studying English literature, which mostly means I spend my time buried in dusty books, overanalyzing poetry, and drinking entirely too much coffee. My college went fully online last year, and one of the perks was, in theory, no exam anxiety caused by walking into a freezing lecture hall and seeing 30 stressed students. The downside? Proctored online exams. If you're unfamiliar, proctored means there's a camera watching you while you take the test. It's mostly to stop cheating. But if the proctoring software detects anything that seems suspicious, leaning too far back, looking away, stretching your arms, it flags it for review. And apparently they have access to video clips. The exam in question was modern American literature. I had studied the works of Toni Morrison, Philip Roth, and some post-war poets. I knew my stuff, or at least I thought I did. My problem wasn't the exam itself. It was me, my sleep deprivation, and apparently my overconfidence. It all started about 2 minutes into the test. I had just read a passage by Sylvia Plath and was jotting down notes. My dog, Max, a golden retriever mix with a propensity for shedding on everything, jumped up next to me. I pet him absent-mindedly, muttering, "Good boy." And then, inspiration hit. I suddenly thought, I've got this. I'm in the zone. I can totally ace this exam. And that's when my brain decided to channel Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. For some reason, probably a combination of exhaustion and a sudden surge of confidence, I clicked my heels together, the full-on, there's no place like home move. Just a tiny, cheerful tap at first, and then, feeling the power of my own brilliance, I did it again and again. I stood up for the full dramatic effect, saying under my breath, "There's no place like passing this exam." For a moment I felt like a cinematic genius, like the universe was applauding my mastery of both literature and life. I even twirled a little, and then it happened. The proctoring software immediately went haywire. A loud alert popped up on my screen. Suspicious movement detected. Please remain in frame. I froze. My heart pounded. I stared at the tiny webcam in the corner, imagining a virtual army of monitors staring back, whispering, "Is she cheating? Is she insane?" But I was committed, I thought. No, I can salvage this. I'll just sit down, pretend nothing happened, and continue. I sat, I wrote, I answered question after question. But then Max jumped again. I reflexively clicked my heels once more, whispering, "Focus, Jamie. Focus." The alert popped again. Suspicious hand movement. Proctor notified. At this point, I was sweating bullets, I whispered. "Oh God, please don't suspend me." My dog stared at me, completely unaware of the chaos he had catalyzed. And then it got worse, about halfway through. The exam platform cut off audio on my end for a second. I panicked. I grabbed Max to calm myself and... Yes, I clicked my heels, 1, 2, 3, in full Dorothy pose. Then I did a tiny spin for emphasis. I could feel the eyes of the virtual proctor burning into me. The alert system exploded. Extreme suspicious movement detected. Immediate review required. I tried to continue working, but my hands were shaking every time I looked down at my notes. I imagined some invisible review panel watching me, taking notes about how I apparently performed interpretive dance mid-exam. I finished the exam, submitted it, and immediately closed my laptop. I collapsed on my bed, Max jumping up for pats, and whispered, "It's over, it's over." Then I got the email. The subject line read, "Proctor review notice. Unusual behavior during exam." Socially, things have smoothed out too. Classmates joke about me affectionately now. Professors reference me in lectures as the student who brought joy to literature exams. And Lisa constantly reminds me, "You're famous, Jamie, famous and heroic." Max, my dog, still gets pats and treats whenever I tell him about my fame. He's officially my sidekick. I even shared the story with my family during a video call. My little sister Harper laughed until she cried. She said, "I can't believe you did that. You're iconic." And for the first time, I felt that I wasn't embarrassed. I felt proud. My ridiculousness had turned into a story of resilience, humor, and surviving academic pressure in my own unique way. So here I am, 6 months later, GPA intact, dignity mostly intact, and a story that will likely follow me forever. I've fully embraced my new nickname. Dorothy of Modern Lit. It's silly, yes, but it's also a reminder that sometimes confidence can be ridiculous, but it can also carry you through the toughest moments. And honestly, there's a strange comfort in knowing that if I ever have to face another impossible exam, I can channel my inner Dorothy again, heel clicks, whispered affirmations and all, and survive, because at the end of the day, there's no place like passing an exam without getting flagged for cheating. Stories number 12. I thought I'd be invited to the wedding, but apparently I wasn't as close as I believed. I honestly never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd get hurt over not being invited to a wedding, but this one hit harder than I expected. I'm 29, and I've known the bride, Lindsay, since college. We met freshman year at a mutual friend's birthday, instantly clicked, and ended up being roommates by sophomore year. She was one of those people you could talk to about anything. We stayed up until 3 a.m. venting about classes, relationships, family drama, everything. After college, we both stayed in Illinois for work. She moved to Chicago, and I stayed in Evanston. We didn't see each other every week, but we texted often, met up for dinner, and called when something big happened. When her dad passed away suddenly 3 years ago, I was the one she called crying. I left work early and drove straight to her mom's house to be with her. I helped her with errands, handled catering calls when she couldn't talk, even stayed the night because she said she didn't want to be alone. When I got engaged last year, Lindsay was one of the first people I told. She screamed so loud over the phone that my fiancé, Derek, laughed and said, "She sounds more excited than you." She offered to help me look for venues and even came to a few dress fittings. When she got engaged a few months later to her boyfriend, Tyler, I was genuinely thrilled for her. I'd known Tyler for years. He was solid. A good guy. Naturally, I assumed I'd be part of her big day. Maybe not a bridesmaid, sure, but at least invited. Lindsay had been a constant in my life for nearly a decade. I never doubted I'd be there when she said "I do" about 2 months ago. We met for brunch, and she mentioned how stressful wedding planning had been. She joked that she was ready to elope. We laughed about it, and I said, "I can't wait to see how gorgeous your dress is going to be." She smiled and said, "You'll die when you see it." Nothing about that conversation made me think I wouldn't actually see it. A few weeks later, I started noticing photos on Instagram. her bachelorette weekend in Nashville. Matching shirts, cowboy hats, glitter everywhere. I wasn't invited, but I didn't take it personally at first. I figured it was just her bridal party, and I wasn't part of that, fair enough, but then people started posting about her bridal shower. A friend tagged her with the caption, "Can't believe you're getting married in a month." My stomach dropped. A month? I hadn't heard a word about a date. I thought maybe she'd just forgotten to mention it, or maybe the invitations hadn't gone out yet. A few days later, another mutual friend, Megan, texted me asking what I was wearing to the wedding. I froze. I texted back, "Wait, when is it again?" She sent back, "September 28th. You didn't get your invite yet?" I didn't respond right away. I checked the mail when I got home. Nothing. Checked again the next day. Still nothing. I finally texted Lindsay. "Hey, random question. What's your wedding date again?" "Just realized I never saved it," she replied a few hours later. "Oh, it's the 28th. It's coming up so fast, lol. That was it." No mention of an invitation, no follow-up. My chest actually hurt reading it. I waited, thinking maybe my invite got lost in the mail. A few days later, still nothing. At that point, I couldn't pretend anymore. I texted her again. I just wanted to check. Am I invited to the wedding? I didn't get an invitation and didn't want to assume either way. It took her a day to respond. When she finally did, it was a short message. "Hey, I feel terrible. We had to make the guest list really small because of the budget. I wish we could have everyone there, but it just wasn't possible." That's it. I sat there staring at the screen, trying not to cry. I didn't expect to be in the bridal party, but I thought I at least mattered enough to be there. I didn't reply right away. I showed Derek the message, and he said, "That's rough, but it sounds like maybe she really couldn't afford to invite everyone." Maybe. But it didn't add up. I saw her Instagram posts later that week. Tons of people there I knew for a fact she wasn't close with. Co-workers she'd known for a year. A girl from her gym she barely talks to. And one of her old college acquaintances. Someone she used to roll her eyes about. So, yeah, maybe it was about the budget, but it also felt like it wasn't. What really broke me was the day of the wedding. My feed was full of photos. Lindsay looked beautiful. Radiant. Tyler looked happy. I sat there scrolling through pictures of people I barely knew, celebrating someone I thought was one of my best friends. She didn't reach out for weeks afterward when she finally did. It was a casual text about how married life felt surreal. I couldn't even bring myself to respond right away. I eventually said something polite like, "You look stunning." "Congrats again," she said. "Thank you. Wish you could have been there," with a little heart emoji. I didn't reply. Since then, things have been different. We haven't talked in almost 3 months. I keep replaying everything in my head. Every birthday, every late-night phone call, every time I dropped everything to be there for her. And I can't figure out what changed. Maybe she outgrew me. Maybe she sees our friendship differently than I do. Or maybe I was just more of a convenience friend. Someone she leaned on when life was hard, but didn't think to include when things were good. It hurts. I won't pretend it doesn't. I'm not angry anymore, just sad. Sad that someone I considered family didn't think I deserved a chair at her table. The funny thing is, I'm getting married next summer. I finalized my guest list last week. Her name was on it for months. But when I looked at it again, I realized I didn't feel right keeping it there. I deleted it, not out of spite, just acceptance. Sometimes friendships fade quietly. Sometimes they die in 1,000 small ways before you even notice. I think ours did both. I still wish her well. I just wish she'd let me say it in person. Update. It's been about 4 months since the wedding, and I'm still processing everything. I thought time would make me feel better, but instead it's been this slow burn of frustration mixed with sadness, and occasionally anger. I keep trying to understand why Lindsay didn't invite me, and I keep running into the same questions with no answers. At first, I tried to reach out. I sent her a casual text. "Hey, hope married life is treating you well. Want to catch up sometime?" I didn't expect her to go into details about the wedding, just a little chat. Hours later, she replied, "Hey, things are busy but good. Life is crazy with Tyler in the house. We should definitely catch up soon." That was it. No acknowledgement of the wedding, no apology, nothing. I felt this weird mix of relief and hurt. Relief that she didn't ignore me completely. Hurt because it made it clear she didn't think anything needed explaining. I talked to my fiancé, Derek, about it a lot. He's been amazing, giving me perspective without judging me for being upset. He said, "It sucks, no doubt, but maybe she's not capable of realizing how much she hurt you. That doesn't make it okay. But it doesn't mean you did anything wrong either." Maybe he's right. But seeing photos of the wedding still stings. Every time I scroll past them on Instagram, I notice who's in them. People I barely knew at college, friends of friends, and no one who's been there for her through real stuff, like me. I keep thinking about the times I was there when she cried over finals, when she fought with Tyler before they were engaged. When her dad passed, I helped her through all of that. And yet, none of that seemed to matter enough to be on her guest list. A couple weeks ago, I ran into Megan, the mutual friend who texted me about the wedding initially, at a local cafe. She was nervous to bring it up, but eventually she said, "I feel awful about how the wedding went down. I know you were expecting an invite, and I can't imagine how that felt." We ended up sitting together for almost an hour. She told me that Lindsay had been extremely stressed about the guest list and had made choices that didn't always make sense. Megan didn't know why I wasn't invited, just that money and family politics had dominated the planning process. She implied that a lot of decisions were arbitrary and not necessarily reflective of real friendships. Hearing that helped a little, but it didn't erase the hurt. It clarified that it wasn't personal in the sense that Lindsay wanted to hurt me, at least not intentionally. But it also confirmed that my friendship with her wasn't prioritized the way I thought it was. I also realized that I'd been holding on to the idea of her validation for too long. That wedding became this symbol for our friendship, whether it was still real or not. And maybe I was expecting more than a wedding invitation. Maybe I was expecting recognition that she valued our history the same way I did. So I've started letting go, slowly. I'm focusing more on the people in my life who show up consistently, who prioritize me and my presence. My parents, my sister Claire, Derek, and our circle of friends who have celebrated our milestones and shared the tough times. The funny thing is, planning my own wedding next year has actually helped me process everything. As we make the guest list, I've been thinking hard about who I truly want in the room when I marry Derek. And honestly, Lindsay isn't on it, not out of spite, but because I've realized that our friendship has changed. Whether I like it or not, she exists in my past, and that's enough. I still miss what we used to have. I miss the late-night talks, the shared history, the feeling that someone got me in a way few others do. But I don't feel bitterness as much anymore. It's more like a quiet sadness paired with acceptance. I'm learning to cherish the memories without needing her presence in the present. I don't know if she'll ever reach out, and maybe she won't, and that's okay. I've realized friendships aren't always permanent, and sometimes letting go is the healthiest choice for both people. For now, I'm moving forward. I'm focused on my life with Derek, on building a supportive network, on planning our wedding with people who care. Lindsay will always be a part of my story, but she doesn't have to be a part of the current chapter. And honestly, that feels freeing. Final update. It's been almost a year since Lindsay's wedding, and I finally feel like I can write about this without my chest tightening every time. So much has happened in that time that I feel like a completely different person from the one who was scrolling through Instagram, seeing pictures of a wedding I wasn't invited to. The first few months after the wedding were rough. I went through the cycle of replaying old memories, asking myself if I had done something wrong, and then getting angry at Lindsay for what felt like a betrayal. I even considered reaching out again, thinking maybe a direct conversation could make sense of everything. But I never did. The hurt was too raw, and I realized I was seeking closure that could only come from within, not from her. Over time, I started focusing more on my life and less on her. Derek and I finalized the date for our wedding, and for the first time, I really started thinking about who I wanted at the ceremony. People who had been there for me, who supported me through everything. And yes, that meant excluding Lindsay. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Inviting her would have reopened wounds that I was trying to heal. I've also been spending more time nurturing friendships that are reciprocal. I reconnected with an old friend, Jason, who has been a rock through career changes and personal struggles. I've been prioritizing relationships that make me feel seen and valued, rather than holding on to the expectation that someone who let me down will somehow make it right. A few months ago, I ran into Megan, the mutual friend who had reached out about Lindsay's wedding. At a bookstore, she asked how I was doing, and we talked for almost an hour. She shared a little more about the wedding planning, confirming that Lindsay's decisions were largely influenced by budget and family politics. Nothing personal, hearing that didn't erase the hurt entirely, but it helped me see that this wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of circumstances and priorities that didn't align with mine. I also allowed myself to grieve properly. I realized that what hurt most wasn't the wedding itself. It was the realization that someone I considered family didn't view our friendship the same way I did. That grief has eased over time, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I've learned that friendships can change and sometimes fade, and that's okay. It doesn't mean they were meaningless. It just means they belong to a chapter of life that has ended. Planning my wedding with Derek has been an unexpected healing process. Seeing the people we genuinely want by our side, knowing they care for us and will celebrate with us authentically, has reinforced the idea that relationships are about mutual investment. There's no place for obligation or performance, just genuine connection. I've reached a point where thinking about Lindsay doesn't sting anymore. If I see a photo of her, I smile softly, remembering the good times we had, but I don't feel longing or betrayal. She was part of my story, yes, but not the current chapter. And that chapter is full of love, support, and people who make me feel seen. Honestly, this experience has taught me more than I expected about boundaries, expectations, and self-worth. I understand now that it's okay to feel hurt when someone doesn't meet your expectations, but it's equally important to recognize when it's time to step back. Not everyone is meant to travel with us through every stage of life, and that doesn't diminish the role they played in the past. Derek and I are happy. Our wedding is coming together beautifully, and I finally feel free from the emotional weight I carried for months. I still wish Lindsay well, genuinely, but I no longer need her validation or presence in my life. That acceptance has been liberating in a way I didn't think was possible a year ago. I've moved forward without resentment, without bitterness, and with a clearer understanding of what I value in relationships: mutual respect, care, and consistency. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm living my life on my own terms, surrounded by people who truly matter.